Here's Vaughn with some room, past the 20, and Vaughn might be gone. He's got incredible speed, outrunning Bama defenders. Inside the 20, Vaughn inside the 10, dives for the end zone. Touchdown, K-State.
Welcome to Sikkim 365 Radio.
Milton gonna take a shot wide open, and just strutting in is Keaton. Joe Milton does it again.
Sikkim 365 Radio is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
On 2nd and 6, Talapapa back in. He's got a stiff arm, a first down, and more. Talapapa to the end zone. Touchdown, Huskies from 42 yards.
Sikkim 365 Radio is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
He moves under center. They snap it between his legs. Shuck's got the touchdown. Well, that's one way to do it.
Have you subscribed to our YouTube channel? Search 365 Sports on YouTube. Brought to you by TFNB, your bank for life.
Travis takes a shot down the sideline, looking for Wilson. He's got it! All the way down inside the 20. Over the top of Justin Broyles.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
And good afternoon. We are here on a Wednesday afternoon, January the 4th, and now just, 6 days away, or actually 5 days away from the national championship game, Georgia-TCU. We'll have a little bit of the audio from the press conference from yesterday that we'll bring to you on and build that up as, of course, the next few days go by up until Monday night's game. Also, Baylor's defensive coordinator, Matthew Powledge, will join us here in about 25 minutes, as he, of course, was hired last week by Dave Aranda, was with Baylor for a couple of years, coached at LSU, or knew Aranda in the past, but also then went to Oregon for a year back at Baylor. Also, Jim Polzin, he'll join us from the Wisconsin State Journal, the reaction in Wisconsin on the Tanner Mordecai transfer. Manny Navarro in the athletic.com, and I want to start with that, guys. I sent an article to both of you. It's in the athletic.com. He'll join us at 4:30. If you look at the reactions, these are players who have been at these all-star, high school players who have been at these all-star football games, these postseason games, and based on at least the responses I saw, the NIL, at least for most of them, did not seem to be among the number one or number two reasons they chose a school.
Well, and that's, I look at it two ways. That's good in one regard in that, you know, if you want to take the glass is half full approach to it, in that these are clearly smarter kids that know, and most of their answers were, you know, and some of them said, yeah, I got offered by this school and didn't take it, or this, you know, it just didn't seem right, or I like the school better. And they answered all the questions in the right way. And that's great. If you're mature enough to know that, yeah, if you're a good enough player, NIL is going to come your way in today's day and age, and that you shouldn't make the decision solely based on that, that's great. That means you've got good people in your life, adults, parents, helping you make good decisions. You're probably a mature kid. The other part of it, though, I thought, and the glass is half empty, is that maybe not all these kids were telling the truth on that because they didn't want to sound like jerks. So they knew what people would say if they're like, oh, yeah, this was important to me. This is the most important thing. They didn't want to say that. Kind of like if somebody asks you, what are you looking for in a soulmate. And if you said, well, she's got to be really hot first, you're going to sound shallow, as opposed to like, oh, I want her to have a sense of humor and be intelligent and all this other stuff. I think they didn't want to sound like that.
Yeah, it was an interesting article. I mean, I do wonder, too, how much truth-telling there was by some guys. I do think when you're dealing with teenagers, no matter how mature they might be or not, that there's, this boastfulness that you have in your youth, especially if you're a high-profile football player. I'm sure that, you want to sound like you're amongst the big wigs and that you're, a guy getting offered $1 million or whatever. I'm sure part of that's wanting to sound cool, but I don't know, like, were they all sitting in a circle being asked the questions? Because if you were just off to the side, like, there's no reason really to fib all that much unless, you're self-aware enough to know, oh, well, this is going to be on The Athletic. I better say something. So, I mean, maybe for some guys there was an element of that. But I don't know. There's a lot of different things just casually thrown around. I mean, one guy worth more than $1 million. One school mentioned 3.2 over 4 years. Nobody talked to me. One guy says 7 figures. One guy says $75,000, a car and an apartment were all offered him. One guy says numbers didn't come up, but the schools like basically introduce you to the folks who do the NIL side of things. And I think that's one of the great falsehoods that's trying to be portrayed and that everybody knows is complete BS. Kind of like we always knew it was BS that players were getting paid back in the day when it was illegal. Oh, no, it's all on the up and up. We all knew that was bupkis. But now they try to act like instead of that, since that's all now free and clear, they try to act as though the schools have nothing to do with any of this NIL and that it's just these collectives just popping up and, no ties whatsoever to the schools. And like, we know that is just complete 100% garbage. I mean, that is the biggest lie. But there's not much that can be done about it, and it's fine, I guess, in the end, as long as the money's, getting in the players' hands. But I do wish they would try and stop perpetuating that scam that somehow the schools aren't involved here. Like, I mean, that's right. That's just ridiculous.
Well, some are actually commercializing their NIL companies.
Yeah, I mean, it's silly, but I mean, I guess you could take it how you want to. I definitely think there's certain guys that are getting offered 7 figures over a certain amount of years. I definitely think there's guys getting offered $75K at an apartment and a car. I definitely think there's guys who probably aren't getting offered that much. And I don't know. I suppose it just depends on who you're talking to and who the schools are that are courting him, because we're talking about hundreds. We're talking really about thousands of players. But even over those top 15 to 20 programs who probably have the money to really go all in on NIL, you're still talking about hundreds of guys. So no matter how, rich the coffers are, this is only going to be for a select few guys. I mean, TCU's probably getting a big boon in NIL right now, but that's not going to the second string guard. That's going to Quentin Johnston, or that's going to Max Duggan, or that's going to some of those guys. So I don't know. I think it just depends on where you look. And that's one of the things that's still being kind of figured out, even on the part of the money people, is probably, how do we do this better in the future? How do we spread it out more evenly? Or how do we saw that with Texas Tech and with Texas, let's make the whole O-line feel like they're all the same, or let's make the entire team feel like they're all the same. And that's extended beyond football. So just depends on where you look. But I don't doubt for a second that certain guys, unnamed or not, are getting offered millions for over 4 years.
I think the best way, and of course it's easy for me to say, if I was Bryce Young or someone like that, I would maybe think differently. I don't know. But, for example, is that a school that has NIL, how many companies it might be, is you take everything, put it in a pot, and then split it. Now, I don't know if the Stars would want that. I don't know if that's what they would want, because Bijan, and I'll use him as a guy that seemed like he's as level-headed as anybody that's a star, and I'm not saying there aren't others, he gets a Lamborghini, right? And that, they're not going to give a Lamborghini to everybody, but then he shared some of what he gets with others, with his offensive line or quarterbacks. I think even Quinn Ewers did that. Among others, Caleb Williams did that. But the article was in theathletic.com if you want to look at it, and Manny Navarro will join us. So we'll pick his brain about a lot of what was said, how they asked the question. Was it off to the side? Was it one-on-one? Was it by cell phone? Was it by text? Was it, as you said, maybe in a group? How did they go about getting that information?
But going back to your part of your question about, do you think that's really like the first, second, third thing or whatever? I think that too just depends on who you really talk to. I think there are guys who maybe come from a more well-off family, so it doesn't have to be as important. And maybe they come from a well-off family, and it's still important because they want their own money. So, I mean, again, that depends on who you ask. For some guys, I do think that academics probably does trump money because what was the old Florida State, the brilliant dude, the 5-star?
Myron Roll.
Yeah, Myron Roll. Like, they could be a Myron Roll type, right? Who's like really is just so focused on education and realizes like the money's going to come into play at some point or another regardless. So again, I think that too is just depends on who you ask. And there is absolutely zero doubt that some guys, no matter probably what they really feel are the priorities, are being guided behind the scenes by others whose money money is important to them. And, I don't know if it would necessarily be street agent or family member or coach or, mentor or what have you. I think there's the danger of that when you have as many guys as we're talking about all across the country. I'm sure there's some elements of that where money is absolutely the driving force because of a situation or, the person, like I said, who's guiding them or just their own desires. Like, I just want to be rich. That's why I play football. I want to get money. So again, another thing where it just depends on who you ask.
I think, and, obviously it changes throughout your life. If I was 17 years old and this was, your parents can tell you a lot of things when you're 17. If you were the most emotionally adjusted 17-year-old, you probably still see, dollar signs in your head. But as you go through life, and I would tell anybody this, when you're looking at a place to go and a career placement, and this is kind of that, if you're looking at a job, money should not be your number one thing, because if it is, you're going to leave out some opportunities that are probably better for you as a human being, but it needs to be in your top 5. I mean, it needs to be something that you care about. So when you're recruiting right now, if NIL is something that you can get, and not every recruit's going to get on NIL or like a NIL that would make you go, wow. But if it's something you can get, it's got to be a priority. But the smart ones are not making it their top priority, because if you do, you're going to wind up in the transfer portal. You're going to wind up unhappy. You're not going to like where you are. And then it all starts again. And then because you took some of that NIL money, is the next place going to do it? Because can they trust you? Yeah. Even though it may not even be your fault.
Not everybody who's a millionaire or billionaire or people who make $500,000, $600,000, $800,000 a year or $150,000 a year are happy. It is important. It does, of course, make and allow you to do things that you want to do or have things that you want to have. But in the end, is it a good fit? Do you have relationships? And some of the players mentioned that. Manny will join us today at 4:30. We'll have, again, Matthew Powledge, Baylor defensive coordinator, at 3:25. A couple of college football notes. Bobby Petrino. This was something that's been out there for really about maybe 2 to 3, 4 weeks. Of course, Jimbo Fisher, after the nightmare year of 2022, pretty much, hey, somebody needs to call plays and help us get hip again when it comes to, or just productive when it comes to offense. Chris Lowe had this. Jimbo Fisher finalizing a deal with Bobby Petrino to become A&M's offensive coordinator, will take over play calling duties. That, of course, has been a big deal. Petrino, one of the top offensive minds in football, briefly the offensive coordinator at UNLV after he was there at Missouri State for 3 years. He's been at Arkansas. He's been with the Falcons. He's been a lot of different places. Bobby Petrino now is Jimbo Fisher's offensive coordinator, and probably needed someone like that for him to truly step away if he can. That still remains to be seen. Someone perhaps elite enough with what he does to get Jimbo to back off on what's going on.
Yeah, and he's probably got an offensive system that's in line with what Jimbo likes, so it's not like even letting him back off that would do it. My only critique of this hire is, I think one of the problems that A&M had last year generally was team chemistry, and you've got a coach, and this is, I'm just going by outward reputations here. You already have a coach on defense in DJ Durkin who has a horrible reputation because of what happened at Maryland. You have Steve Adazio, whose reputation is as a rage monster. And then you have Bobby Petrino, who we know is not a guy who was real trustworthy with his employers before. So Jimbo set up this kind of rogues gallery of coaches who know what they're doing X and O wise, but is that all you're looking for? Like, you're coming off a 5-7 year. Don't you need to kind of bring this thing together a little bit? That's my critique. The football knowledge of Bobby Petrino is more than I can ever even hope to know. I could work the rest of my life and not get to that point that Bobby Petrino has, but I do wonder about the whole vibe of it all when it comes to preparation and game week and game days. Recruiting's not going to suffer. Clearly it didn't before. The staff can still recruit, but will it like pay off in the long run when it comes to what the team didn't have last year, which was continuity and chemistry.
Yeah, what a Hall of Fame career Petrino had at UNLV. His first things first. I mean, what a run that month that he was, just named a coordinator and never ended up doing anything. But yeah, I just hope we never hear the word culture come from Jimbo Fisher's mouth in the immediate future, or talk about good culture and things like that, because he's basically, like you say, you call it the rose guy or whatever, but I mean, I don't know what to think of this. I mean, he truly is collecting, I saw somebody make a smart-ass tweet, but it's true. It's like, hey, you know what we should do? Let's go get Art Briles and have him as co-host. It's like, basically, let's get every hot lightning rod name, that's been in the news for a bad reason over the last few years in college football, and assemble this on the A&M staff. So, culturally, I don't love it. When you've already got a couple of questions there, and you're coming off a year where clearly the culture wasn't already great to begin with, because players were basically just running around and, flying through parking lots and, worried about NIL. And, ultimately the on-the-field product, I think, suffered because of that. It suffered, also because they just didn't have a very good offense. But, I'm not a Bobby Petrino fan, and I don't love this, and I think it kind of reeks of desperation on Jimbo Fisher's part, and I think it's kind of a hire that you can make where you don't totally release control of the offense, but you do have at least some freshness there, and we'll see what happens. I mean, I wouldn't love this as an Aggie fan. I wouldn't be, over the moon about this hire, because if you tell me, Jimbo's going to relinquish play calling duties, awesome. This is a great opportunity. You go get Bobby Petrino, you're living off of his success. I get it, but we can't. Where's the new Cliff Kingsbury at? Where's that guy? You talk about fresh new ideas. Let's get some truly fresh new ideas in here. But Bobby Petrino is a name that's been recycled a few times now, and I don't know that he's the missing link in this offense putting it all together. But maybe he is. We'll see next season. Obviously, I just don't love it from a cultural standpoint and a name standpoint. I get that it's a splash, but look, you even had. Is there a bigger, and I don't want this term to come across super negatively, but I saw use a different word, a supporter than a guy, like a Billy Liucci, for example. And even he a couple weeks ago was like, no, this is just talk or whatever. And now today it's like, boom, no, it's actually true. It's happening. And I think even guys like that are kind of like you're happy about it, but you're also kind of like, we'll see what happens from this. And that's kind of where I am right now with it. So yeah, we'll see, but it's certainly interesting, the hire itself. And we've known this was a possibility. So now that it's finalized, we can really, dive into it and see what happens.
He's got a resume, no question. He's bounced around quite a bit, and has been to Louisville twice, obviously the NFL less than a year with the Falcons, and then with Arkansas. Then things went bad for him. Western Kentucky. So now he is the offensive coordinator, or about to be. I guess it is the offensive coordinator for Jimbo Fisher. Couple of transfer portal notes. UCLA gets Carson Steele, Ball State running back. Now, you have to pay attention, but 1,556 yards and 14 touchdowns for Ball State in the MAC. And that now confirmed. He's got 2,400-plus yards in his career. UCLA gets a young man that put up a lot of numbers at Ball State, and they now get some boost to their running back room.
But by the way, Garrett, I'm going to try to send you a picture really quick of Carson Steele, and you tell me when you guys see this. I'll send it to the desktop. But you tell me when you see this if this guy really was going to go anywhere but UCLA when you see Carson Steele. But one of the things I noticed Chip Kelly's doing, and other coaches have done it, but Chip went to the MAC as well for his transfer quarterback in Colin Schlee. So he's going to the MAC, and he's trying to find these guys that are maybe playing a little below the level that they should be and trying to bump them up a level. Carson Steele's dominated the MAC. Colin Schlee has not really played all that much at Kent State over the year because he had some injuries, but he put up good numbers while he was in and has very good measurables. So, yeah, it's going to be a common thing now. Coach is doing this. Chip Kelly, he's not too far off, but he loses his two top offensive playmakers in his quarterback and his running back in Zach Charbonnet and DTR, the quarterback. So he's got to replace those guys with experience.
The MAC can play football.
Yeah, and they can. Yeah,
they can play football.
So get some toughness in there into UCLA. So
All right, so there's that. When you get the picture, go ahead. Craig, anything on Carson Steele you want to add to that?
He's a good running back, put up good numbers. Saw him constantly in the weekly stats leaders and season leaders and all that, doing stuff for the Earl Campbell Award. He's always a name I came across and kind of followed along with. But yeah, super solid player, definitely deserving of a step up, so to speak. And I think that's a really nice addition for the Bruins.
He's got some 6'1", 210 or 215 as far as how he's listed. 9 games of 100 yards or more during 2022 season, and 4 games with multiple rushing touchdowns. He is originally from Indiana, and you're right, Paul. He's got a thick neck, good-looking kid. He's headed to UCLA. Mississippi State, I mentioned this yesterday. It's now official, announced it on Twitter or social media, Dylan Johnson, Mississippi State running back, is headed to be at the University of Washington, which is on their way up after this year with what they have going on with the Huskies, and Michael Penix coming back for another year.
Yeah, and they're kind of full at running back anyway, and he adds another running back to that stable. And you guys mentioned yesterday we're in the top 5 about, Washington's offense was good enough against Texas, but it wasn't exactly, it wasn't water cooler talk afterward. Did you see what they were doing? Well, now they've added another piece. This is another piece to protect, Michael Penix from having to do it all himself. So, yeah, like I said yesterday, in the top 5, it's on the up. Washington's certainly on the up. Okay, here's Carson Steele, and tell me, this is if they did Point Break like Origins, this is Bodie from Point Break, Patrick Swayze, early as a young guy.
I'll tell you something, that's a big dude, man. He's a muscled up young man who's obviously a hell of a running back. So Carson Steele, there you go, Paul. Thanks for that picture. Craig, Dylan Johnson, we knew that yesterday late, but Dylan Johnson to the University of Washington.
Yeah, I mean, to Paul's point, yeah, he definitely has that California boy kind of look, but he's one heck of a running back, like I said a second ago. But yeah, Dylan Johnson seems to be a good pickup for the Huskies. I mean, the Pac-12 really shaping up to be, coming off of a very interesting season, shaping up to be a terrific, thrilling kind of final swan song for USC and UCLA next year. That's their last year, right? Is next year, 2020. Yeah. So that's really shaping up to be, quite the final dance, the last dance, so to speak, for the Pac-12 as we know it, and probably the Big 12 as we know it as well, even though we'll have this one little buffer year. But it'll be some interesting goodbyes next year in college football. But as far as Dylan Johnson goes, I think Washington's an attractive program right now. I do think that, probably relied a bit too much on Penix and, his receivers at times. I thought the Alamo Bowl, there were some missed opportunities. They're still able to make some big plays. Like Jalen Polk's a terrific player, but it just felt like they just weren't quite on the button against Texas, but still we're good enough, obviously. But yeah, I think it's terrific to surround your Heisman Trophy potentially contending quarterback with more weapons than a guy from a solid program like Mississippi State who's got some skins on the wall. Yeah, I'm all for that transfer pickup.
When I thought about Washington, the first thing I thought about was Javion Sunday, who was an incredible running back, high school football player, 5 minutes from where we are in our studio. He just hasn't played. He's had 9 carries for 29 yards, and I know that their running back room has been deep, and at times great young man. He just hasn't played, and you just wonder kind of where he is. He loves it up there based on the feedback I've been given, but he just hasn't broken through what has been a very deep running back room.
Well, Will Nixon's also in that running back room.
Will Nixon, former Midway
and the
player.
reason why those guys weren't popping through was because Tu'uilapapa was sitting there getting all the carries and the yards for them. That was their dude. We saw him against Texas, out there doing his thing, and great swan song for him. So, they need running back help, and we just mentioned 2 guys we know randomly that are in that Washington backfield, but we can't say anything that they've done. So clearly, they need some help in that running back room.
2 different styles, too.
And Tu'uilapapa, was their bell cow, like I said. So there's a lot of carries out there that need to be ate up, and so I think that Dylan Johnson's a great move from that standpoint.
So there you go, Carson Steele to UCLA, and again, Johnson to the University of Washington.
And he's not their only one, because they also got Daniel Gatta from Arizona State as well previous to that. So they've started to add up some guys, not even counting their recruiting class.
We are now joined by Baylor's defensive coordinator, Matthew Powledge. He was at Oregon for a year, with Baylor for a couple of years under Dave Aranda, part of that fantastic run with the Sugar Bowl team at 12-2. Joins us with Craig, Paul, and I'm David Smoak. Coach, thanks for your time. I know it's probably been a quick turnaround to kind of get settled in. What was the first thing that Dave Aranda said to you when he started talking to you about becoming the defensive coordinator?
Oh, man. Yeah, probably one of the first things was it would be awesome to have you back. And I don't know. I was blown away just by the phone call and the opportunity. I probably was in shock for a little while. Just about the whole conversation, to be honest. Just extremely humbled and grateful that I was even considered for the position.
Oh, be honest, you just missed us all here in the 254 too much, Coach.
Yeah, I missed all three of you guys for sure. I missed Waco. I missed Big O's. I missed I-35, the Alico Bills. I missed all of it.
You did not miss I-35. Nobody.
You had us until then.
You did not. Yeah, you were fine until then. Matthew Powledge joining us today on 365 Sports. You are from this area. You were at Huntsville, Sam Houston State. Karina, your wife, you just had a baby very recently. How important was the family part of this? A big part of also wanting to come back?
Yeah, I think it was a huge part of it. I don't mean to discredit just the Baylor piece at all, but I would say it was the cherry on top, or it was the icing on the cake. I think family is extremely important to us. Both of our families we're extremely close, and the opportunity to be 2 hours away from grandma and grandpa and all of that with the baby was just really exciting to us, especially my wife, and that was big for sure. But I think more importantly, just what Baylor's about, what Matt Rhodes is about, what Dave Aranda's about, and I think just how special of a place that Baylor is, and our first experience here was extraordinary. I think that was probably the lead off. That was the thing that really drove everything.
You inherit a defensive roster here that is in a very interesting kind of state of transition from it was kind of two factions. There was a lot of like 4th, 5th, 6th year guys on this defense, and then a lot of guys who were in their first or second year, and not really anybody in between. And the veterans are leaving. You've obviously got transfer portal things that happen at every school. When you look at what you have coming back, and I know that you know most of these guys, what do you see that you're going to have to build the most with the youth movement that's coming on this defense?
Yeah, well, I think in the secondary, there's definitely been a youth movement, especially this past year. I think we'll definitely have to continue to build depth in that area. I think the linebacker room's another area where you're really strong in there from a youth standpoint. You're really strong from an ability standpoint. I think what you lack in there a little bit is maybe some of the experience that you would like to have. But some of those guys play meaningful snaps this year, which is great. I think that it's a really talented roster, but it's a roster that's going to need an off season. It's going to need Vic Valoria really getting after them in January, February. It's gonna really need the reps of the spring football. I think I'm really excited about leading that side of the ball. But when I look at the roster, I even get more excited.
Where do you start, Coach? Like, what's obviously this whole getting the job process, and then I'm sure the logistics of when am I moving, the family, and all of that. But football wise, what's kind of the start of your journey back in Waco?
Well, we're gonna have a recruiting weekend this weekend, so that'll be huge for us, right? So I got back to Waco yesterday, and first thing, I've been in Oregon recruiting on the phone, talking to kids about Baylor and what we're gonna do in 2023. So that was the first part of it, and second part was I drove in yesterday, and Christian Robinson had beat me here by about 12 hours, and they were actually flying back home. They spent a day with Coach Aranda, and They were looking at houses yesterday. So the first thing I did as I drove off 35, exited off and went and met them while they were looking at a home, just to connect with them and, let them know how excited I am about him and his wife, Kaylee, being here. And so I think, we went to lunch today with a couple of our players. I think, I think that's it really, is just reconnecting with people, continuing to build those relationships. It's going to be important this weekend that we do a great job with, some of the families that are going to be here and letting them know what our vision is and what Baylor is really about. So I think that's where you kind of get started, is making sure you sure up all those things and you build a great foundation that's built on connections, it's built on relationships, it's built on people. And that's where we are right now.
Coach, what is more important, the still remaining whatever you can do from the high school level, or actually the transfer portal with what you need to fill on wherever that is on defense?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I truly believe that I still think it starts at the high school level. I still think you want to build your roster that way, recruiting high school kids, getting them in here at an age where they're very what's the word I'm looking for? Maybe influential, but being able to pour into them and build it from that direction. But I think back to, 5 years ago, there was a supplement. It was called junior colleges. And, every year you took, maybe depending on your roster and depending on, what your program's philosophy was, but you took anywhere between 3 and 10 guys, from that level every year. And maybe a couple of those were transfer guys. There just wasn't a thing called the portal. So I think really the portal's almost become like that supplement now. It's, hey, we're going to build it high school wise. And then, hey, we kind of have some holes to fill here. And we're going to use the transfer portal in that form or fashion. But does it kind of makes sense what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's to me where it's at right now. I still think high school's where it's at, though.
You were only gone for a year, but when we talked to Bradley Dale Pivoto the other day, I mean,
my God,
saying your praises, and I also said that we need to get him and Phil Bennett together to do a podcast when Coach Pivoto retires too. That would be unbelievable. But you only gone a year, but you're kind of a sponge when it comes to football knowledge and different perspectives. Even though it was a short time, do you feel like you learned a whole lot in that time with Dan Lanning and the folks in Oregon?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, 100%. Me and Dan have been connected. We've been, really good friends since our time at Sam Houston in 2014. We were together there. And in the off season, every summer we used to call it the pass rush clinic. And he was coaching outside linebackers one year, and so was I. And so initially that's kind of how it got started. And we would do that every year. We would meet up during the off season and spend 3 or 4 days talking football together. We'd usually figure out a way to play a round of golf during those 3 or 4 days, and we would share ideas and things like that. And then we would go back, our separate ways. And so anyways, this past year, our defenses aren't very different. They're very similar. We believe in the same thing. Coach Aranda, myself, Coach Lanning, it's a lot of similarities if you watch the style of defense, the scheme, the X's and O's, and then just the fundamentals as well of both defenses are pretty close to the same.
Coach, what was Coach Aranda's sort of message when he reached out to you about the job and about the potential there? I mean, what was kind of from your vantage point, what he was what was he looking for? What was kind of the idea behind, approaching you and you being the guy that could fit what he was wanting to do?
I think a couple of things that maybe that were said were maybe just energy, relationship, connection, those seem to be maybe the main topics that continue to come up. And those are all things that I really believe in. And I think, I think when you enjoy doing something, when you really, I'll be honest, I haven't seen many championship teams do it without passion, without enthusiasm. I think when you have that, you can do just about anything, and you can be great at it. And so I told the recruit this the other day, and it was ironic. I was kind of like figuring out myself while I was telling him this. He was asking about. I had talked so much about asking him questions about himself for 15 minutes and just listening to him, and he kind of flipped it on me. He's like, "Coach, what about you? What do you like doing? What are your hobbies?" And really, outside of Karina, baby Zoe, my family, and football, I couldn't really think of many other things. I don't fish very much. I don't hunt very much. So I started thinking, that's it really. It's just football, family, and so I'm really passionate about those things. And I think when you incorporate that, you have a lot of enthusiasm about it, and you really love what you're doing. I think you can accomplish something great. So I don't know. I believe in the things that Coach was talking about.
I spoke with Jalen Petrie last week with the Texans, and of course, you know all about him. He's had an incredible rookie year, but he was unbelievable with you at Baylor, along with everyone else as well. When I asked him about the reaction to you being hired, it was that morning. I'm excited for him. He was my position coach. Everyone knows that at safety, he's the best of the best. He has the it factor. When you hear a former player say that about you, or coaches that mentored you say that about you, what does that mean?
To be honest, listening to you say that, I got goosebumps. Means the world to me. Jalen means the world to me. Many of the other players that I coach here at Baylor, mean the same. A lot of those guys are still here. I'm extremely grateful and really humbled and blessed and fortunate to have the chance to coach those guys. And I really appreciate him saying that. It means a lot.
Matthew Powledge, defensive coordinator at Baylor, with us on 365 Sports.
You obviously came in the middle of Jalen's career, but he was a guy who kind of did it. He might have been one of the last old school guys, right? The last way it used to be, where he committed to a school because he liked it here. He was the only recruit in the class and grew it up. Will you tell tales of players like that to kind of modern recruits to kind of show, look, things will work out for you if you pick the best path for yourself?
Yeah, I think so, 100%. I think in this day and age, everybody wants, and this isn't just football, but this is probably in a lot of aspects of life and even in the business world, they want instant results. They really want to, see, they go from the high school level and they're, all state, they're all district, they're the MVP on their team, and they get to the college level and it's like, hey, there's more work to be done. And, there's a redshirt year involved, or, there's, I'm a special teams player this year and I'm asked to be the, rotational, whatever, receiver or linebacker. And, they sometimes struggle, dipping back down to, their freshman, sophomore year of high school, basically, you know what I mean? Where they were and having to make that climb or that jump again. And so they get antsy and sometimes distracted. Sometimes there's outside noise involved. And all of a sudden it's like, hey, maybe that grass is greener over there. And that's not always the case. I think it still takes what it takes. I still think there's a lot of hard work involved. There's an analogy about like bamboo, right? And, so bamboo, I think sometimes if you plant bamboo, it takes like 5 years, for it to break the ground or something like that, something extraordinary like that. But then once it breaks the ground, it grows at a rate of like 2 inches a day. And sometimes that's kids when they get to the college level, right? They're, you're pouring, onto that plant, and it's growing, and they don't see it. They hadn't broken the ground yet. And they don't know it. But then maybe when they're Jalen Petrie and they get to their third year and they actually break the ground, like all of a sudden this thing's about to shoot up and it's about to be something pretty special. So I think that's what it is. And some kids struggle with that concept, and some of them are like Jalen, and they're just going to keep on pounding that rock, and they're going to find a way to break it.
Matthew, you have been to a lot of places, part of an early career, a lot of stops, and you've been, as I mentioned, a lot of mentors, including Mark Stoops, Napier. We mentioned, obviously, Pivito, Dave Aranda. This is something where you've made this climb pretty quickly from Baylor to Oregon, back to Baylor. Is this now kind of, not that you don't have a future as a head coach somewhere, but this is kind of a chance for you to take over and do your own thing here for a little bit?
Yes, sir. There was a part of me, that I had, great friends on that Oregon staff. So did Karina, my wife, and it was, we had a really fun season. It was, a successful season to some extent, and we were just starting to build it, and so that pulled on me a little bit. But at the same time, you work 12, 13 years, for these type of opportunities, and to finally reach a position to where you can, potentially accept one of these opportunities like this, and then for it to be at a place like Baylor with Coach Aranda, Mac Rhodes, like I said, it was that made it a no-brainer. But yeah, extremely excited about it.
Coach, last time you were here, you were safeties and special teams coach. Now you're coming back as defensive coordinator. Any idea on kind of how those other responsibilities will be divvied up? I'd imagine that'd be a lot on your plate to do everything you were doing and also be defensive coordinator.
Yes, sir. Well, if Coach asked me to do it, I would make it happen. I'd find a way. But I'm not 100% sure on some of those other details.
Okay.
I just know I'm gonna give it my all with the defense, and yeah, obviously the safety is a little bit more of my expertise, and hope that everybody's proud of what we put on the field this next fall.
Matthew Powledge, again, defensive coordinator at Baylor as well. What is your favorite, or when have you gotten used to some of the Dave Aranda analogies, books, philosophical part of it?
Yeah, there's so many good ones. I was thinking about analogies when you first said it, but I just think what we're built on here. It's funny. I was at Jasper's for lunch, and this gentleman walks up to me, and he goes, "Are you one of the coaches?" And the older gentleman, I said, "Yes, sir." And he goes, "I just want to tell you how much," and he doesn't know, that I wasn't here this past year. But he says, "I just want to tell you how proud I am to be a Baylor Bear fan. And I want to tell you that y'all handle y'all's business the right way. I love watching y'all on TV and how the young men interact and how they go to work every day." And to me, that said a lot, because I know that's when we got here in 2020, that was Coach's vision, to be built on, the fact that we're going to win with character, and better people make better players. And we're going to invest in these young men more so than just on the football field. And for somebody just randomly, it was almost like this was staged, to come up to me my first day back and say that. It was like, okay, like this is where I'm supposed to be, because those are the things I believe in. I forgot the question, to be honest, David.
No, that's okay. About some of the Dave Aranda analogies.
Yeah. Oh, one of my favorites, okay, is talking about simulated pressures. All right. This is back in 2020. We got here, and we had a 3-4 clinic right before COVID hit. So the 3-4 clinic is kind of a thing that's been around Coach Aranda, I think maybe since the Wisconsin days. And, everybody's like lucky to get a invite to this 3-4 clinic. I mean, you can talk to any of the defensive minds in college football, and it's like, hey, have you ever been to the 3-4 clinic? It's like one of those kind of deals. And so, long story short, we're having it here in Waco, and we have some staff here on campus, and Coach Aranda starts doing his presentation on simulated pressures. And so he's talking about how he's trying to get across to everybody why he likes simulated pressures. And he says, I moved out here to Texas, and I start buying fajitas. And when I was not in Texas, you would go to a place and you would get maybe chicken fajitas, and you would pay $20-$25 for a plate of chicken fajitas. And here you can go to a place here in Waco and you can get beef, chicken, and shrimp for like $9.99, and that's simulated pressures, man. You get more. Get more for less. and so like when he landed that plane, it was like a light bulb went off in my head. Like I was sitting there, I'm like, wow, that's awesome. So, anyways, long story short, I'm in Oregon this year, and I have a young coach say to me, he said, Coach Powell, he said, why do you like simulated pressure so much? And I said, man, this is the perfect opportunity to use Coach Aranda's fajita story. So, anyways, the young man really loved it. He enjoyed that.
That's a great story. We'll have to ask him about that fajita story at some point. I know you need to move on as well, but 2-7, then 12-2. Last year, obviously, expectations sky high, did not end well. Can you try to explain the fire sometimes when you see Dave Aranda, his personality, the way he is outwardly, but he has a fire inside of him, and sometimes people don't understand that. Can you try to explain how much he wants to get this thing back on track this year?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I talked about the passion and enthusiasm earlier, right? And, I'm probably more of a personality to where if you come to practice or you sit in on a meeting, you can probably, see it externally, probably a lot clearer, a lot more. And I just think that people are built different ways, right? And so that, that passion, that enthusiasm, 100% lives in Coach. He might be as passionate or more enthusiastic than anybody in the building, except it's more internal, and he does it with, with a straight face a lot of times. But he's got one of the biggest hearts that I've ever been around, and I truly mean that. I really believe in him 100%. There's a lot of trust there between us, and there's no question about it. There's no one that's going to work harder than him to make sure that Baylor football continues to trend in the right direction.
Christian Robinson going to be a part of that energy too?
Absolutely, yeah. I'm a big fan of Christian, but more so from afar. We've never obviously coached together. We didn't have a prior relationship really, but we have similar connections, similar people we know. I've coached with a couple of the same guys, and I've always heard great things about him, how he was a young up-and-comer. And then when you watch his position groups play, you see what everybody's talking about. And I couldn't be more excited to have him on staff, because I also know that he's an outstanding person, and he fits us, but he's going to bring something to the table that's really going to make us a lot better. And it's really his position room is going to love him 100%.
A lot of people texted me, hey, don't forget there's a lot of Bearcat fans in Waco, Texas as well as Sam Houston State fans. And
yes, sir.
What a run.
Eat them up.
Yeah, what Casey Keeler's done, they're about to go FBS. And so that was brought up as well. Hey, Matthew, thank you so much. Welcome back to Waco, Texas, and thanks for spending time with us today when you have a lot of things on your mind and doing what you're doing right now.
Hey, thank y'all so much, David, Craig, Paul. I appreciate y'all a bunch. And anytime, I thank y'all.
Yes, sir. Matthew Powledge, new defensive coordinator at Baylor. I want to bring something up because there was discussion whether or not it was a part of what happened defensively. Because Ron Roberts, he didn't forget how to coach defense. He's a hell of a coach. Auburn picked him up almost immediately. But there was a little bit of missing oomph when it comes to some of the coaches, the defense, whatever. Not that others don't have a fire in their belly or aren't outwardly, excitable, but that Matthew Powledge maybe and Christian Robinson will be a part of bringing a little bit of oomph, so to speak, when it comes to how they coach defense. Not that they'll coach it differently, but how they are, in a way, energizing that football team on that side of the ball.
Well, I mean, can you reach the guys and make it work? Because that was obviously a huge issue for Baylor this past year, where there's something was lost in translation, and through like different levels of, the veterans saw it one way, the younger guys saw it another way. It just wasn't what they were a year ago.
I talked about this a little bit yesterday, that I felt like the mental side was the part that was not quite right. And I don't want to completely dismiss. Like, I feel bad talking about this team sometimes because I think just expectations are now so high. It's almost unfair in some cases. Like, I knew there was going to be a drop-off after last year. We all did. Most people did. There's still some people that thought.
If people were realistic, they had to at least
I mean, there was some articles out there and whatnot. They're like, no, they could be even better. And I never bought into that. That's fine, though. Like, hey, a couple plays go differently, and maybe they are a little bit better. So they weren't that far off from that. But, I mean, pretty much anybody had to figure that they were going to drop down a little bit from what they lost. So, that wasn't the shocker. The fact that, though, it was 6-7 and it was losing, multiple games to close the year, and it was losing the close games that you didn't necessarily lose the year before, but doing it over and over, like just throughout the year, there was just something that felt off, and we never could quite put our finger on it. And I don't think Dave Aranda really could either. I think he referred to a lot of what was going on, but he couldn't really say it outright. He said it subliminally or even pointed you in the right direction to let you figure it out for yourself, Clearly, like, maturity was an issue for some of the players, and clearly coaching connection was an issue, and everything was an issue to some extent.
And some of it was talent.
Yeah, but like this is the same team that went from 2-7 to 12-2,
right.
And they went from 12-2 to 6-7. So they could very well go from 6-7 to 2-10, or they could go to 10-2 again for all we know. I mean, look, nobody was predicting TCU to be in the national championship game last year, so everything's on the table. I think there is an excitement now that Powledge is back in town. I think it's clear when you see guys like Jalen Petrie celebrating the move that there was a lot of love there and a lot of belief there, and I'm excited to see what he does. And it's no diss of Ron Roberts or Ronnie Wheat, but particularly Roberts, since he was the guy that was around here more. I think they did a great job, but yeah, clearly something was just off last year. And so, Aranda wasted little time in going to make the move, to make a change. And here was the guy that he went after. And Powledge said, he's a little bit surprised, but in a good way. And, it all sounds good, and now it's going to be time for them, like he said, to go out there and recruit and then eventually get out there and spring ball. But I think they know the issues. I think they know what was kind of ailing them last year, and I think that's a big part of why he was a hire. When you talk about the energy and the enthusiasm and kind of those things. So I think he'll bring that. I think that will be much needed, and I think it'll help a great deal.
Appreciate his time, and he answered a lot of the questions, including the one about him going to a lot of different places in a short amount of time, but all of a sudden he's now the defensive coordinator, co-defensive coordinator at Oregon, defensive coordinator at Baylor under Dave Aranda. When we come back, we have to take a really quick segment here because we're running behind, but great opening to the show. Hope you've enjoyed it, all of you in the chat room. 365 Sports, this, of course, until 6 o'clock. Back in a moment.
Richard Carr, Buick GMC Cadillac, they are the people that you can count on for the life of your car. Once you buy it from them, they'll help you take care of it the rest of the way. But even if you don't buy it from them originally, they still have a great customer service department, as I experienced myself on a couple of different occasions, getting my car fixed up after some accidents. And now, I know that they are the people that I can count on, and I know that they'll be the people that you can count on as well, whether it's getting your vehicle fixed up, just getting your vehicle serviced, or it's going and buying a brand new or pre-owned vehicle. And right now they've got new trucks and SUVs all over the lot at Richard Carr. Make this a memorable 2023 with the car or truck from Richard Carr, as they have dozens of Sierra trucks, dozens of SUVs, the biggest inventory they've had over at the dealership in 2 years right now. Get 3.9% interest for well-qualified buyers on GMC Sierra and GMC Terrain trucks in stock, 3.99% financing on Buick Encores, Buick Envisions, and Buick Enclaves in stock as well. And they also have dozens of quality pre-owned cars and trucks in stock under $20,000, affordable, thoroughly inspected, ready to finance. They have quality vehicles ready to reliably take you on the road this 2023. For 23 years in Central Texas, Richard Carr's built a reputation as the people you can count on for your automotive needs. Run by proud Central Texans, proud Wacoans. Log on to richardcarr.com today. Call now or go see them now off Highway 6 at the Imperial exit.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
How did Edward Jones become one of the biggest financial service companies in the world? By not acting that way. Financial strategies, one-on-one advice, it's a big difference. And that's why Brad Wilson, your Edward Jones financial advisor, makes sense of investing. Experience the difference for yourself. Brad Wilson, 250 Sharon Drive in Woodway, 254-776-4337. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Hey, this is Bryce Petty, former starting quarterback and two-time Big 12 champion, and I know firsthand the importance of being in top shape both on and off the field. So listen up, men. If you're feeling beat down day in and day out and looking for that high-performance edge that separates the men from the boys, then look no further than the Petty Clinic Low T in Waco. Petty Clinic is a comprehensive men's healthcare clinic with an atmosphere catering to men. Board-certified Dr. Kent Petty has a special interest in offering the highest quality medical care to men of all ages. Some of the services offered include screening and treatment for low testosterone or thyroid, infertility, high blood pressure, diabetes, high cholesterol, sleep apnea, while offering comprehensive wellness exams and complete men's health lab panels. High performance men, remember, it's not just a Petty thing. This is Bryce Petty, encouraging you to reach out and Google search Petty Clinic Low T or go to pettycliniclowt.com and get your complimentary lab screening today.
When we moved to Texas, we were like fish out of water. We didn't know anyone in our neighborhood until our Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent came to the house. She was so helpful and reassuring, a friendly face with that Texan hospitality I'd heard about. When we purchased a Texas Farm Bureau insurance policy, we knew we were making the right choice. We knew our family would be protected.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Waco Custom Marketplace is your hometown grocery store with a full-service butcher shop and bakery. Hi, this is David Smoak. The butcher shop can take your customized orders for seafood, pork, and poultry and custom cut your favorite steaks from bacon wrap fillets to T-bone to bone-in ribeyes. Cut specifically the way you want. They have Norwegian salmon fillets, catfish fillets, sliced ham or turkey and lunch meat, variety of cheese available, and several options of sausage links. Fresh chicken breast or whole chickens, sliced bacon, pork chops, ground beef, marinated beef, and chicken fajitas, and always large briskets available, plus fresh vegetables. So the great product, customer service, and family tradition of the Bauer family continues at Waco Custom Marketplace, open Monday through Saturday. A full-service butcher shop and bakery available. Waco Custom Marketplace, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco, or WacoCustomMarketplace.com.
Welcome back to Sikkim 365 Radio.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
Yesterday, we opened up with a show, DeMar Hamlin, Buffalo Bills defensive back who went down Monday night in the game in Cincinnati. And Dr. Goswami trying to give us a little bit of background on all of what scientifically might have been going on. Earlier today, Bengals head coach Zach Taylor was asked about some of the discussion that he and Coach McDermott, when the Bills had following Hamlin collapsing, and this is really, really good stuff.
You know, it came together with Sean McDermott and the officials kind of led the way there, and it was determined, you know, just to take a few moments as teams to just process what had happened and separate and go to our sidelines and just take a few moments to process, because no one had that chance. You know, I look at Sean and those players, all they were doing is looking at their teammate and their brother and hoping for the best there. That's the only thing going through their minds. I didn't say a word to anybody the entire time except for TB, who knew DeMar, and I could tell that he was going through it. So I could just see the expressions on Jordan Poyer's face and Josh Allen's face and TB's face, and so you're processing just you know how awful the situation was. We separated as teams. The officials again did a great job of coming over to me and saying, "Hey, you know they're still trying to process this moment here, Coach McDermott and their team." And so instead of playing telephone on separate sidelines, the decision was made just to go over there and make sure we're all, you know, talking together. And I won't disclose any of the private conversations Sean and I had except for this. When I got over there, the first thing he said was, "I need to be at the hospital tomorrow, and I shouldn't be coaching this game." And so that to me provides all the clarity, because there was no unprecedented is the word that gets thrown out a lot about this situation, because that's what it is. But in that moment, he really showed who he was, that all his focus was just on DeMar and being there for him, being there for his family at the hospital. And at that point, I think everything trended in the direction it needed to trend. And
that's Zach Taylor, head coach of the Cincinnati Bengals.
And reports on DeMar Hamilton's condition are
Hamlin.
Oh, Hamlin. Sorry, thank you, Craig. They say he's showing signs of improvement. So, I mean, obviously he's still in the woods right now, but at least the news we've gotten today is a little bit positive about, you know, that things are trending, hopefully in the right direction.
Well, I mean, the news could be a lot worse at this point. Yeah. So, I mean, it's almost like no news better, you know, in some ways. But yeah, I mean, anything positive is obviously great to hear, and hopefully that remains the case and just continues to get better and better. But yeah, you're seeing a lot of articles and a lot of questions being asked of coaches of like how they handled this and how they talked to their players. And, you know, I think that was just a big wake-up call for everybody. Like, everybody's little reality bubble got bursted, and all of a sudden the real reality kicked in of like, oh, wow, this is a super dangerous sport. This isn't just, you know, millionaires running around having fun. There's real-life repercussions to what they do, and I think everybody knows that. But we see it all the time. Like, we just got done like 2 straight weeks of football games, like constantly on our television at, you know, all these different levels. And, you know, here in Texas, we went from like Texas high school state championships to straight into bowl season. And now, you know, we got Cowboys in between, NFL. And so we just see it so often that you forget, like, oh yeah, there's a real risk to what these guys do. And that was just a wake-up call that not anybody was anticipating, but probably in some ways needed, because there will be things that come from this that are super beneficial to players in the future. And so I think that will be, you know, something that's a positive that comes from this. But the ultimate positive will obviously him getting healthier and healthier by the day. I think that was one of the most beautiful things I saw, though, on the broadcast Monday, to be honest with you guys. Like, the one moment where I kind of just stopped analyzing things and was when the 2 coaches got together, and I realized, like, you know what, Roger Goodell's not going to call this game, and the announcers aren't going to call this game, and ESPN's not even going to call this game. Those 2 coaches right there are going to decide if this football game is played or not.
And I think they did.
And and I think that they did. I think that they're the reason everybody went to the locker rooms, and then from there it all got sorted out. But this big, giant league, for it to just all of a sudden boil down to these 2 people getting together and deciding what was best for their teams, and in that moment, I thought it was just, I don't know, it just felt so real, and I don't know how else to describe it, but I just thought it was in a really bad situation, just a really kind of cool moment to see those 2 get together and decide, you know what, we're taking our players off the field, we're going to the locker room, and we're going to chill out for a little while before before anything is finalized. But I think they made the right call.
When we come back, some notes about the college football season, a couple of thoughts about the Big 12 and their 2-6 bowl record. Thank you, TCU. Thank you, Texas Tech, for taking care of business. And TCU has a chance to add another one on the table. And just kind of summarize the year a little bit. We will get into the Big 12 men's basketball last night, including Jerome Tang, longtime Baylor assistant, with a huge win for Kansas State in Austin. in what was an NBA-type score, 116-103, and a couple of records that were broken. Baylor tonight at home against TCU. Kansas held off Texas Tech in Lubbock. And in a lot of games to get to this week. This is 365 Sports. Alan Samuels, Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat, committed to the community. Man, they are involved in so many things. I was at an event. I was at an NIL event, and Alan Samuels was one of the sponsors. They're a sponsor of our Academic All-Stars team when every year we annually honor elite high school student athletes for what they do academically, not so much about athletically, but what they do with their grades in the classroom. Alan Samuels, Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat can take care of your transportation needs. Well-priced, new and used models, expert service center. I've been to the service department a couple of different times. One just to get the oil changed, once to get some new tires. It was always very smooth. The transition was great. Easy and convenient shopping. And you can go online, Alan Samuels, DodgeChryslerJeepRam.com or AlanSamuelsDCJ.com. Ted Teague is the general manager, involved in so much around the community, and also a place where you can find your truck, van, SUV. Alan Samuels, Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat Loop, 340 east of 84 in Waco.
From the first workout to the last practice, sports is an incredible challenge. Hi, this is Dan Ingham with the First National Bank of Central Texas, and we're proud to support each athlete, every parent, and our educators. From families, small businesses, to the biggest industry, we're here to help. With remarkable products like First Free Checking, we've got banking ideas that fuel big dreams. The First National Bank of Central Texas. Familiar faces making local decisions.
Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be a part of the Waco community. We're a small family business right here in Central Texas, and our goal is to bring down the cost of healthcare while maintaining high quality. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important, and unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. That's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through the difficult time. We offer premium MRIs just like a hospital with state-of-the-art technology and specialists, but you'll pay less. Sometimes thousands of dollars less, whether you're using insurance or not. At Ideal MRI, we accept most insurance and there are no hidden costs. Even offering financing if that's needed, everything included in the price, and you'll not get something as a surprise in the mail later on. If you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. They'll know. You can schedule an appointment safely from home online in minutes at idealmri.com or give us a call, 833-IDEAL-MRI, idealmri.com.
In the market for a quality metal building? Since 1943, Pioneer Steel & Pipe has helped Central Texas residential and commercial customers with metal building design, panel options, building components, and trim options. Pioneer Steel & Pipe's residential line is energy efficient, offers low maintenance, reduces insurance payments, is impact resistant, and carries up to a 45-year limited warranty. In addition, they can also help you find a metal building contractor for your project. Pioneer Steel & Pipe with locations in Waco and Bryan and at pioneersboys.com.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive and North 19th Street, right behind the bank, is a hidden gem in Waco. If you're a fan of bourbon, especially local Texas bourbons, that's where you gotta go. Balcones, TX, Devil's River, whatever it is, they've got it. Riverbend Liquor and Wine, plus the best selection of craft beers in Waco, seasonally churned out throughout the year. Whether it's spring, summer, fall, or winter, Riverbend Liquor and Wine, best selection of craft beers, a speedy drive-through window, and excellent customer service. Find out more on Instagram or just go by and see them. Lakeshore Drive and North 19th Street behind the bank.
You want to know why Stonewood Dental is so successful? Listen to what happy customers have to say.
It's pleasant. It's different than any other dentist office. I really feel like they care. And it's not that you're here for 2 hours waiting on someone to take care of you. It's quick and easy, and I bring my kids, and my kids love being here too. They really love the treasure box. Staff is really nice and accommodating, real friendly. you feel more like home. It's not sterile looking. Everybody has their own personalized rooms with decorations and decor, and they'll even have a blanket for you when it's cold. I've recommended people to actually come here, and they are patients now. I really love it here. It feels like family.
Learn more, stonewood-dental.com.
This is Sikkim 365 Radio. Text us at 254-339-1122. The Sikkim 365 Radio text line is sponsored by Riverbend Liquor and Wine, with the most extensive variety of craft beer in Waco. A hidden gem on Lakeshore Drive and 19th Street.
National championship game, Georgia TCU coming up on Monday. We'll hear a little bit on those two teams here in a minute. Not this segment or next segment. We'll have Manny Navarro from The Athletic and his thoughts about the NIL story that he wrote. Georgia TCU Monday night and in LA at SoFi. Also, don't forget Sunday afternoon, South Dakota State, North Dakota State played for the FCS championship. They played earlier this year, and South Dakota State won that game 23-21.
Hopefully it's as good of a game as that one was. Yeah. You go for a nice little rematch, and there's more college football out there than just a national title game. So good to mention that.
It's a weird time though. Sunday early afternoon when the NFL's last weekend, last Sunday at least of the regular season.
I'm sure there's plenty of reasoning why. I have no idea what that is.
I think one reason why, and I saw this in chatter, is that the NFL. The weekend's coming up is kind of weird, but they have an opening on ABC at that time where they have an ABC ESPN game.
Yeah, and there's two games on Saturday this week in the NFL, so that's pretty interesting. But yeah, I guess it's probably just TV. I mean, lots of reasons why. It's probably not lots of it. Just television told them this is when you are.
And that's the way it is with a lot of things. Yeah. Now. Some college football nuggets to wrap up the year, and then we break and come back with a couple of things with Georgia and TCU. Stetson Bennett passed for 190 yards in the fourth quarter.
That seems like a lot.
Most in any of the playoff games since they began back 8 years ago.
That's cool. Pause on that 1 second. ABC wanted it there. I had to look that up and know for sure why they put it there. Basically, ABC just wanted it there.
There you go.
They looked at Friday night, but you're going up against NBA doubleheader. And I guess Saturday, obviously, there's Paul, you mentioned some of the NFL. So anyways, ABC wanted that. Sorry, back to Stetson
Bennett. No, that's okay.
Bennett.
Stetson Bennett, 190 yards passing, the most by any player in the fourth quarter of a playoff game. Teams leading by 14 or more points at any point in the fourth quarter were 19-0 in the college football playoff. Georgia, of course, came back from that, 14 or more with their win against Ohio State. So that now is 19-1. The longest streak of scoring that is current in college football. The Florida Gators, Paul, are right now, that means you haven't been shut out. Started back in 1988, currently 436 games with at least scoring. Now, again, we know they've been down, but their record right now, 436 consecutive games without a shutout. TCU is next in line at 381. Started back in 1991 and current in through, of course, their win against Michigan. Other current streaks include Virginia Tech, Georgia, I can't believe this, Nebraska. It's somebody like 9 times haven't been shut out. The last time they were shut out was the year after a national title when Jake Plummer and Arizona State beat them 19-0. Boise State, there's the Boise State again in one of these lists. Alabama, since 2001, have not been shut out. Clemson, another one, since 2003. And last year's offense probably, at times, threatened that note.
Yeah.
With what they were doing. Florida State, Paul.
I don't think it's
they were 232 consecutive games until they were shut out
by Wake Forest, right?
In 2006.
It was Wake Forest,
I guess
believe.
so.
Yeah, it was Wake Forest. I do remember that being a not a good day for me.
So those are the active streaks in the top 25 of consecutive games, at least scoring something, scoring points.
By the way, it was Georgia who beat Clemson in 2003. I was curious about that. That was towards the end of Tommy Bowden, I want to say, or in the middle of it. But I was curious about who did that because they've been pretty good for a while.
Mm-hmm. So those are some streaks. I don't know. This is from the Blitz, the College Blitz. I get this every weekend. TheBlitzSports.com.
You love those newsletter stats.
I really do. And here's, you know why? And if you're old like me, you remember
paper newsletter is very old. Like that is the paper newsletter.
It is online. But how many of you remember? Let's remember. How many of you remember picking up the paper like on Sunday or Monday, and there was a huge section in the sports page that was nothing but the schedules of college football teams?
Yeah, I loved all that. I don't get a newspaper now mostly because we as a society have rendered them useless, and that's unfortunate. That's more on us than on the newspapers, but in technology. But yeah, I miss that. But I've adjusted. Craig's adjusted. We're younger than you, but I'm not calling myself young. I'm 42. I'm middle-aged now. Craig's not there yet, but
getting close.
He's getting close. So I've adjusted. What surprised me about you is that you have held on to being a tree murderer so much. Honestly, I can't believe you have not gotten a paper mill sponsor to help out with this. Look at this.
I'm going to call Temple Inland, I think. I don't know if they're still doing the pulp or not in Lufkin, Texas, but I'm going to get in touch with them.
I'm still murdering trees, Paul. Don't be mistaken. I was still getting the paperback book rather than the digital copy, depending on what book it is. I still like to have a book in my hand. I tell you what I don't like about the newspaper now is yes, I don't have to really search for anything, but if I'm looking for something in particular, I hit Command Shift and whatever, and I can find exactly keyword Oklahoma, and it just shoots me to where on the page rather than flipping through and trying to find where a certain article is. I can just get there so quickly. But I think that's neat. I just was really commenting on the amount of information and the kind of the weekly nuggets that you get out of this thing, and it's interesting.
And I could easily just copy and paste it or whatever. I get that, but I like to sometimes have it in my hands. Just part of that as well, mainly because I talk too much with my hands. So this allows me. 50 different schools this year were ranked at some point in the Associated Press college football poll. 50 different schools, some for just one day or for 1 week, but 50 of them. Which of these schools were ranked every week this year from start to finish?
Which schools are ranked from start to finish?
Which schools in college football, the Associated Press poll, were ranked in the preseason poll and were ranked throughout the entire season?
Alabama, Ohio State, Georgia, Michigan,
Clemson.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Michigan,
yes.
Yeah.
USC?
Yes.
Utah?
Yes. Oregon, yes. We're running out of space here.
Was Washington in the top 25 preseason? I don't remember.
Washington was, where are they? They were not. They didn't get, they were 18th by the third week in September. And then they dropped out for 3 weeks or 4 weeks in October and then made a big run.
Wasn't in the preseason top 25.
They were not in the poll until the first week in October.
There would have been nobody in the Big 12 that was there from start to finish.
Let me see. Oklahoma State, nope. They dropped out at the end.
Yeah. Texas dropped out at one point.
Texas was not even ranked at the start, and they were in and out 5 or 6 different times.
North Carolina?
North Carolina, I will look them up.
Penn State.
North Carolina, no, they weren't ranked, Paul, in the top 25. Remember, they had a terrible ending last year. They weren't even ranked till the third week in October. Who'd you say?
Penn State.
Penn State, no, they were not in the preseason ranking. They were not in the first week in September, but then they ran the table all the way up to number 9, including doesn't include the last one that they have once the season is over. There was one other school, Tennessee. Nope, they were not, because they were not a part of the preseason top 25. Think about that they weren't a part of the top 25 and absolutely in the national championship picture for quite some time. So those were the schools inside the preseason poll that remained there throughout the year.
And they'll all be in that next preseason one, I'm sure.
Yeah, a lot of the ones we talked about,
A lot of those like Alabama, Ohio State, Georgia, Clemson. Well, Clemson, let's we need to pause a little bit, but I mean they'll be right there in the top 25. To just what degree they can maintain that, I don't feel as confident as I do in the other ones I mentioned: Ohio State, Alabama,
Who do you
Georgia.
think off the top of your head? And I know we got a break. Who do you think off the top of your head? I think we could be 5 for 5 on this. Who will be among, no matter the order, in the top 5 next season?
Just name 4 of them: Alabama,
Ohio State, Georgia, and
I think FSU might be in there.
Does that make you
top
nervous?
5. I think they'll be in the top 10 though.
Oh no, let's get them to let's let them be A&M next year.
No, let's. They're not sneaking up anybody anymore though. So,
I mean, who else though?
Notre Dame. Nope, because they're at 19th before their bowl win.
They're top 10-ish. USC with Caleb Williams
has to be
in there. But then again, you just giving them the benefit of the doubt after watching that defense. I guess, if Riley makes a little move, then that'll give you the boost that you need. But I think just off the Caleb Williams hype alone, that'll put them in the top 5, even though we've got some evidence to believe that he can't do it all on his own
How about Tennessee loses Hooker?
Yeah.
They lose Hyatt, but they got a little momentum going on. So that's just a few notes about the Associated Press top 25 poll. Literally on Sundays, or it probably wasn't Sunday, I think it was on Mondays, you'd get the newspaper, no matter which one it was, and they'd have it almost in full half page or a full page of all the games, all the teams, all their schedule, who they'd play, and who they hadn't yet played but will before it was said and done. All right, when we come back, we have a lot to get to. Manny Navarro will join us from theathletic.com on a story he wrote about NIL as he's talked to players at these high school All-American games. We will later on today hear from John Machota on the Cowboys at 5:30. And then Jim Polzin from the Wisconsin State Journal. His thoughts, what's the reaction up there in Madison on one of the quarterback transfers in Tanner Mordecai there? And we'll do that with other schools as they get their quarterbacks and kind of get the feedback from various analysts, writers of certain teams. And this is 365 Sports. Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness on Lakeshore Drive in Waco, filled with energy. And right now they're doing a lot of renovations around the locker rooms and around certain parts as they put in new flooring. And it's going to be like an all-month type of deal, but that hasn't stopped anybody from being there if you want to be there, to be in shape, to get fit, and also possibly lose weight and also inches. Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness on Lakeshore Drive in Waco with 40-plus group exercise classes, from spin classes to boot camp to even yoga, bar classes, and more. Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness, a place where you can call home and a place where you can get yourself to feel better in so many different ways on Lakeshore Drive in Waco.
I hate my job, but I don't mind getting up in the morning. I dread each day, but I can't wait to get out of bed. You ask me why, and what I'll say to you is true. Well, you can get breakfast tacos at Rudy's Barbecue. Scrambled eggs and brisket, they ain't fooling around. Salsa drap, son, they're the best in town. Barbecue for breakfast, yes, it's true. Put a smile on your morning at Rudy's Barbecue. Next in line.
Don Humidor, your home with a 48-foot walk-in humidor with the elite cigar brands from around the world, including the #1 cigar of the year, Aging Room Cuatro Nicaragua. Plus, they have the great brands like Macanudo and Artur Fuente, Rocky Patel, Aston, and so much more. CBD, great for sore muscles, aches and pains, sleep, Vita Dreams, and anxiety, mild depression, general health and wellness. Their staff very knowledgeable on the subject. If anyone is curious about CBD, ask Carol and Ashley. Don Humidor in the Townwest Shopping Center off Valley Mills in Waco.
There are 26 letters in the alphabet, over 600,000 words in the dictionary, and just 3 of them said together can change everything. Let's order pizza. Those 3 words lead to dough made from scratch and 3 fresh signature cheeses that blanket golden crust in a heavenly melt on Marco's Pizza that'll blow your mind. So visit Marcos.com to order and stop by Marco's Pizza in Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
Baylor Scott and White, Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, hand or wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trusts. Baylor Scott and White, Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
Let Camille Johnson Realtors guide you seamlessly through the process of buying your dream home or selling your current one. Commercial, farm and ranch, or residential, Camille Johnson Realtors can smoothly and successfully lead you through any transaction. With a team of 28 experienced agents who are excited about serving you, Camille Johnson Realtors services the entire greater Waco area. If you're in the market to buy or sell, contact Camille Johnson Realtors, 104 Midway Center in Woodway, or find them online at www.camillejohnson.com. Camille Johnson Realtors, elegant, charming, warm. Welcome home.
Boots add protection. Good boots help you climb better and move forward faster. And when your son or daughter steps into the boots of a U.S. Army officer, they also learn how to lead. In these boots, they'll gain more confidence with expert training in one of more than 150 occupational specialties. In these boots, they'll stand a little taller and lead a team with diverse backgrounds and areas of expertise to successfully accomplish whatever challenge comes next. In these boots, they'll earn respect with valuable experience from day one that will give them solid footing for success into the future. Highly qualified candidates who earn a spot on our team can receive comprehensive health care coverage, college tuition assistance, and a bonus of up to $40,000. See all the things your son or daughter can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
Welcome back to Sikkim 365 Radio.
The 4 o'clock hour is sponsored by Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store, specializing in custom jewelry and repair, all in-house.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
Manny Navarro with theathletic.com today with a featured story about the NIL and being in an all-star game, the high school all-star games. Of course, one of them is done, another one is about to be played, and kind of what some of the blue-chip players have been saying about how much NIL came into play on their recruiting trips and also with their decision. And Manny Navarro joins us, Paul, Craig, and David Smoak on 365 Sports. Manny, thanks for your time. I love the story. I absolutely love the story. I guess our first question was, did you ask these guys, like, off to the side when you had them one-on-one, or was this a group meeting? How did this all go down?
Yeah, I try to use discretion as much as possible. In these interviews at all these All-America games, usually the players are trotted out. They sit behind a table. Everybody comes up with their camera phones and their microphones and sticks it in their face. I kind of waited for them to finish, sort of the big wave and tried to talk to them as they were, kind of walking over to the next area, grab them for 3 or 4 minutes and just talked to him and told him, hey, look, this is really off the record. I'm not trying to get you in trouble or anything like that. And so a lot of the guys, they were fine with it and provided some thoughtful responses. Some kids were more into it than others. But, it's the kind of story that I think we need more of in college football, a little more honesty about some of these things, right? We want to know what the truth is and what's really going on. And I think for the most part, I got truthful answers out of these guys.
On the other end of that, like you said, for the most part, it really felt, I'm just reading it. It did feel like there were people being genuine the way that they worded things. How nervous were they to maybe not be as completely forthcoming because they don't want to sound superficial?
Yeah, I mean, I think in some instances for sure. I mean, a lot of these kids, I didn't know them personally. I hadn't met them before in person, so a lot of them, it was, whether or not I knew them, I think some of them felt a little bit more comfortable with me being a little more honest because they might have known me from 7-on-7 or, some other events that had gone on throughout the year. But, the ones that didn't know me, I think were certainly a little bit more guarded with their responses. And I think, certainly, when I phrased the question, where does NIL rank for you, first, second, or third? I think they all didn't want to sound like NIL was the most important thing, but I still came away believing that, in all honesty, as much as money plays a factor now in these decisions, I do think that what they ultimately look for are relationships and bonds with coaches and the people that are going to be coaching them. I think that matters just as much as NIL.
Manny, you've talked to recruits for a long time. Do you get any sense, do you think it's harder now for guys, this NIL piece? Like, it's obviously better from a personal standpoint, even from a familial standpoint and all of that, the benefits, but does this make the process harder in your mind?
I think it does, because certainly, there were some elite guys that I spoke to who said, look, and one of them, his responses in the story was, my parents literally got a phone call on signing day and my coaches that, saying, hey, we'll pay you $1 million to flip to our school. I mean, I know the kid ultimately says he didn't take the $1 million and signed with the school he wanted to, but it's still one of those things where you're still 17, 18 years old. Somebody's coming at you with that kind of money. I don't know how you don't think about it, right? Like, how do you not consider that, that sort of offer at the last minute? So I certainly think for some guys, it's a little bit tougher than others, deciding whether or not NIL has to take priority. But I think for the most part, these guys, they realize that a lot of this money, when they're approached and discussed with them, it's more about whether or not you're going to get it once you get there. Some guys obviously get fronted some money to come to the schools. I'm not saying those things don't happen, but I think a lot of them sort of look at this and say, okay, which schools really do pay, right? Like when they go on these recruiting visits, I think they really want to know who really does pay and how quickly do you get the money, et cetera. And I think that weighs into the decision a little bit more, not sort of a last ditch effort phone call.
Manny Navarro with us, theathletic.com and the NIL story. And what I did see was you mentioned the relationship with the staff. You mentioned the player development, which, of course, players are looking at. I even saw maybe a quote or two or something you mentioned where, yeah, there's NIL money, but the big money is in the NFL, and that's why player development comes into play so much.
Yeah, I think without question. I think a lot of the elite guys, when they're looking at schools and they're making these decisions, they're looking at, well, which coach puts the most offensive linemen in the NFL? Which coach, puts the most defensive backs in the NFL? Which coach has the strongest track record with first-round picks at this position? I certainly think that plays a much bigger role, at least for the elite kids, the guys that have NFL aspirations, the guys that are highly ranked. I think they want to sort of pair up with those kind of programs. I know for the guys I covered locally here in South Florida, where I'm based out of, a kid like Brandon Innes, okay, a 5-star receiver out of American Heritage, a can't-miss prospect, one of the best receivers in the country. He wanted to go play for Brian Hartline because Brian Hartline and Ohio State turn out these receivers every single year. So I just think there's a lot of thought process goes into that, certainly in terms of player development.
It does seem like a lot of the guys have the sense of, and I thought this maybe a little bit this past year with Arch Manning. Like Arch Manning knew that, look, he's Arch Manning. Wherever he goes, somebody's going to give him a lot of money. So it doesn't have to be about that because you are Arch Manning. If you are, a guy like Cormani McLean, who is, a 5-star DB, or like you said, Brandon Innes, wherever you go, you're going to get money. So why not wait on that and find out where you're going to be and then cash the check?
Yeah, 100%. I think a lot of the 5-star guys, the top 100 recruits, I think for all of them, they feel like they're going to make money no matter where they go. It's just when you get the outrageous amounts of money where you're hitting 7 figures. And again, I mean, these conversations that I had at the Under Armour game, I was having with guys during the regular season, when they were still playing their high school seasons. And some of these coaches tell me, yeah, their school's coming at them with saying they'll make 3 point whatever million. So to me, that's what you have to sort of weigh is if you're an elite kid, am I really going to be able to make that kind of money if I go to a traditional Power 5 that may not be paying that to go to another program that maybe, isn't winning, doesn't have a rich history, but is willing to fork out that kind of cash to get me to go. And that's not an easy decision for some of these guys. It really isn't. In the end, though, I think the elite guys ultimately say, I'm worth more than that. I can make that money. Being a professional player matters more to me than a quick payday.
Manny, one of the questions you have in there is about what advice these recruits would give. Was there anything particularly poignant or something that stood out that somebody said? There's a lot of great quotes and answers from guys, but was there anything in particular that you found to be, somewhat profound, if you will?
Well, there were certainly a lot of interesting responses. The one that kind of stuck out to me that made me laugh a little bit was a couple of guys mentioned it. They said, find out who you're really talking to on the phone. And they meant that because so many of these coaches, and I get it. I mean, these head coaches and these coordinators and assistants, I mean, it's tough to be texting and calling these guys all the time, right? Mm-hmm. So maybe they have a secretary, maybe they have somebody in the football office that takes care of that for them. But a couple of guys mentioned that on several occasions, they were talking, to the head coach through text message, and all of a sudden they get a DM from the coach, and they're wondering, well, why is he messaging me through Twitter on DM if I'm already talking? So it was sort of like, okay, if two people are talking to me, and I know it's not the same one. So that was just kind of funny, that pay attention to who's really talking to you, who's being honest with you, because it gets complicated.
That's I never thought about that.
I can see it, though, because you so often hear about guys getting texts all the time, and it's like, how do they manage in 24 hours to constantly be talk to 50 different prospects or whatever it may be? So that makes some sense, and yeah, that's smart on the players' part to have figured that out for sure.
Yeah, I think the one thing that I took away is a lot of these guys really are smart. I think sometimes we think of high school athletes, oh man, they're being taken advantage of by these adults, right? I think for the most part, a lot of these All-Americans that I spoke to have a good head on their shoulders. That's probably why they're All-Americans. That's probably why they're the best players in the country, because they can see for themselves kind of what's playing out. They're smart enough to make informed decisions and to have the right kind of priorities when it comes to making decisions. Obviously, money is always going to play a factor, especially now that it's legal. You're not going to get in trouble for it anymore. So I think, it is part of their thought process. But in the end, what was refreshing to me was so many of these guys really prioritize, like you said, player development, relationships with the coaches, and that still matters in college football.
Manny, did anyone admit to someone on the staff offering them NIL money rather than at least guiding them where they should go?
I think for the most part, a lot of the kids I spoke to throughout the year, not just at the Under Armour, said the majority of the coaching staff that come to talk to them will mention NIL in terms of how much money their players are making, but they don't really talk to them about offers and say, hey, this is how much we're going to pay you. It's more about, hey, we've got these players, they make X amount of money at your position. This is what you could potentially get, but you need to talk to people outside the program. I think for the most part, a lot of schools are following the rules in that regard. They're allowed to talk NIL. They just can't specifically talk about deals and set those kind of contracts up. So I think those are third parties. And a lot of the kids told me when they were contacted and offered these large amounts of money, that it wasn't people that were on staff.
I wondered if there was anybody that was representing or was trying to get him to come to a school that the school did not recruit the player. Did you hear any of that?
No, I think for the most part, these are all, relationships that are established. You don't get a cold call out of the blue. At least I haven't come across that yet in the time that I've been covering, where a school just come out and say, oh man, we missed out on this cornerback and we're coming after you here at the last minute, even though we haven't recruited you at all. I think there's always sort of some relationship established through the process.
All right, one more thing now. Of course, Miami last year, disappointing, 5-7. Expectations are huge because it's Miami and also the coaching change. You look around the ACC, Florida State's on the rise. Clemson, not that they've leveled up, but they're still pretty good. And then there's NC State, and then Duke and Elko and Pittsburgh and North Carolina. Is there a concern at Miami that the hill's higher, a little bit of a higher climb than they thought?
I think I've come to form the opinion that Mario Cristobal, as much as he'd like to win, I don't think he's in a rush. I don't think this is, hey, we've got to bring in 20 transfers and we've got to turn this thing around immediately. The way he recruited, the way that they went out and acquired their talent in this last cycle, he made it a high priority to get elite high school players in Miami's class. And they signed a top 5 class. If they get Cormani McClain, it'll stay there. If not, it'll flip a little bit. But, I mean, the priority was elite high school players that they can develop and take time with. Yes, they signed a few transfers. They signed 11 transfers in the first cycle when he first got here. But I think, for the most part, his approach has been, this is a long-term rebuild. He signed a 10-year deal worth $80 million. I think he's going to have the support of the administration through this. It's not going to be, hey, why did you go 7-6 next year in 2023? I don't think he's going to have that kind of pressure if he goes 7-6. I think by year 3, year 4, he'll have to start showing some results. But I think for the most part, the way that he's approaching this thing is with patience, and he's trying to build it what he says is the right way.
Manny, do you think they'll do anything transfer-wise at quarterback, or were Tyler Van Dyke's issues more health-related down the stretch?
Yeah, I don't think they blame Tyler Van Dyke at all for the struggles last year. I mean, they felt like they didn't do a very good job protecting him. They didn't give him a whole lot to work with at the receiver position. There were a couple guys who were banged up there, so it affected his numbers. I think for the most part, they're okay with going back into this next season with Tyler as their quarterback. But if somebody who is better than Tyler Van Dyke were to suddenly become available in the transfer portal, like everybody else in college football, I'm sure they would look at it and consider it and see if it would work out for them.
Manny, great stuff. It's a heck of an article. For those who are watching or listening to us, theathletic.com, Manny Navarro and the story about the NIL and some of the reactions from high school players. This is 365 Sports. Manny, thank you. Happy New Year. Hope to talk to you again soon.
All right, guys. Take care. Thanks.
We'll come back a little bit now with a couple of comments in the next segment from Kirby Smart and also Sonny Dykes. They play for the national championship on Monday. But anything from that, there's just so much going on. And I like the article. I appreciate the article. I really do.
I found the article really interesting. I did see, a couple posts. And I think this has more to do with the fact that Baylor had a bad year. That I think that if you had a good year, then NIL is not like some big humbug thing. If you had a bad year, you're like, everything sucks, college football's dying and whatever, right? I mean, are you all on board with that?
Yeah.
It's very much like what the temperature in the room is, because I think if Baylor had won like 10 games, then nobody would be complaining about NIL all that much or whatever the case may be. But that is just a part of the deal, and to get a little inside peek on, how it's operating and how it works for certain big-time prospects is, cool to hear and interesting to get their perspective and shed a little light on, how it's really working behind the scenes, because it can very much just word of mouth get out of control and gossipy on like, this guy's getting this and they're throwing around bags of cash and they're doing this. And to actually hear players go, no, this is what I looked at. And to just simply say in some cases, like, who recruited you hardest? Well, Michigan State, but I just didn't feel the vibes there. You know, and it wasn't NIL related. It's just like, I just didn't feel it there. I felt it better at LSU or whatever, just to get that kind of insight and know that, like, yeah, certain guys just aren't going to always like Alabama the best, or aren't going to always like this team the best, or this pitch the best, or whatever. And to also know and hear that, so basically this is not all surrounding money, and to also hear, to as further extension of that, where does it fall in line of your priorities, and to see a grab bag of academics for one guy and relationships for another guy, and whatever the school itself for another guy. There's a lot on these guys' plates, and it's not just simply here's money, commit, you go play there, and that's as simple as it gets. I mean, as he mentioned, these are young men, and they're smart young men in a lot of cases. I'm with him. I don't think we give young people probably enough credit. Like, I don't think I was just some dummy at 17, 18 years old. And I think a lot of guys were much smarter than me and have, obviously been in the spotlight for a while. They're going to have, especially in this day and age, like, I think there are smart business guys at 17, 18 years old, and we probably don't give enough people credit for that. We just figure it's mommy or daddy or the high school coach or whoever handling that. There's like TikTok millionaires that are 15 years old.
Yeah.
So I think these guys are smarter than we give them credit for. I think their priorities are probably more based than we give them credit for around things other than just the cash. And we got to keep that in mind, that it's not just transactional all the time. It feels that way. I understand it feels that way, but this is still college football. It's an element that not everybody loves or is on board with, but it's also not as bad as it's portrayed sometimes as the death of college football and things like that. I think that gets blown way out of proportion. And that's, a conversation that could lead into other side conversations. Is it the death of certain parts of college football? Perhaps. We'll see. But is it the death of the sport or anything like that and try to go over the top with it? I don't think so in any shape or form. And for a lot of guys, it's a blessing that otherwise they never would receive.
Yeah, that's why I wonder, like, when everybody kind of freaked out about NILs, the thing is now it's legal, but if it was going on before, if it's now out in the light, like, are you just mad because you have to know about it now?
I think so,
yes. I mean, like, that's
everybody
one of those
wants
things.
To believe. I'm sorry to cut you off, but I think everybody just wants to believe they picked North Carolina because they love the school and they love Chapel Hill and they love Mac Brown, and it's like, no.
I guess it's the same kind of thing of like when you have a coach and like, well, our coach doesn't allow our players to misbehave. Like, no, look, I would tell you that 95% of coaches do all they can to keep everything between the lines when it comes to player behavior and all that stuff. And there are some that just don't care at all, but they can't control human beings. Like, you can't control them all. And you have that. So, it didn't happen here. Well, no, it's going to happen everywhere to some degree. And you can't do it. But that you have like, well, my school is better. The place I like is better. The team I like doesn't put up with shenanigans. Like, no. Everybody has a shenanigan meter. It's just different everywhere, all over the place. Oh, my school doesn't need NIL to do that. No, they all do. They're all going to. It's all about the competitive balance that they're going to have to try to find. It's just now you'll really know out in the open who has the most alumni that are willing to spend money.
Yeah, but you also know who's got the staffs that can recruit around that if you're not the school with the most money, and really the staff that can build relationships and the staff that can produce NFL guys and the staff that can, have a life set up for you after, your career is over with because of your degree or because of whatever it is you learned there. So, yeah, I mean, I go back to, kind of what I said at the beginning of the show. It matters on who you talk to. It depends on who you talk to, just like these answers. Some guys, NIL's first. Some guys, it's third. For some guys, relationships are first. For others, it's the location or whatever. So it depends on who you talk to, but I think it's more positive than negative for sure.
A part of that article, Garrett, the quote about Christian Robinson, who's the new inside linebackers coach at Baylor, a part of the article, part of it was which school or coach you didn't sign with recruited you the hardest. And one of the names on there, one of the players said, former Auburn assistant Christian Robinson, and then he also mentioned Penn State defensive coordinator Manny Diaz. Great coaches, recruited me hard, went to both schools. I love both of those guys. I feel like we'll always have that connection. So there was one of the quotes that included the newest member of the Baylor football staff in Christian Robinson. And if you didn't hear earlier, we had Matthew Powledge, defensive coordinator at Baylor, who joined us earlier in the show today. By the way, Cuz's Corner, dealing with a broken arm. The nuisance, I just want to say, hope you're doing okay. That's got to be annoying where you can't use whichever left or right arm, whichever you are, left-handed or right-handed. Many of you, we appreciate you, what's going on in the chat room, also the text line. When we come back, Kirby Smart, Sonny Dykes, championship game Monday. What did they today or this week have to say as the game now gets closer and closer? And this is 365 Sports. PettyClinicLowT.com. Dr. Kent Petty can help you become the high-performance man you want to be, used to be, and need to be. You know, you see all these commercials now on television about ED and all this stuff, and there's pills, and there's this, and there's that. Dr. Kent Petty's going to try to do it the right way, or at least the natural way. Here's what he can do. One, contact him. If you have any kind of issues with what might be ED, your sex drive is not the same, your energy is not the same, you're lethargic, your sleep habits, everything's out of whack, or at least some of them. 1 out of every 3 men have symptomatic issues of low testosterone. Contact Dr. Petty at PettyClinicLowT.com. Email, phone number, top left-hand corner. Tell him I sent you. They then, his office and staff, will set you up to get your blood work. They'll take care of that. They'll set it up and take care of it. Once the results come back, Dr. Petty will look and examine where are you with your testosterone level, where it should be. Is it low or is it really low? and then give you a program to increase your testosterone levels so you can become the high-performance man that you want to be, need to be, used to be at pettycliniclowt.com.
In our logo and advertising, we say we are people that you can count on. What does that mean? It starts with providing a quality vehicle and quality service at a fair price. But it also means we do what we say we will do, and we treat people fairly with respect. It starts by hiring great people, good local folks who work hard with a caring attitude. Our employees are the real reason we are people that you can count on. Put us to the test and see for yourself that at Richard Carr Motors, we are people you can count on.
What are you waiting for? Next year's New Year's resolution to lose weight, get fit, start working out? 3, 2, 1, go to Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness. If you really want to get in shape, get rid of weight or inches, you have to make a commitment to work out, end the excuses of not enough time, you're too tired or too busy. There's a special place that will change your life at Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness on Lakeshore Drive in Waco. And they have a commitment to you too. With personal trainers Christy London, Randall Corley, and Alex Bosch, state-of-the-art Cybex equipment, new weights and spin bikes, clean and spacious locker rooms, each with a whirlpool and sauna, and a staff that will know your name when you walk through the front door. Elite tennis facilities and a great tennis pro in Britt Coleman. Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness is a place you can call home, a place you can work out on your own or with 40-plus group exercise classes. It's time for you to get in shape, lose inches, get fit at Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness on Lake Shore Drive in Waco.
It takes time to reach goals. It's a truth that applies to more than sports. It goes for your financial goals as well. You work hard for your money, and you deserve an investment strategy that lines up with your game plan. And Chuck Verno, your Edward Jones financial advisor, can help. If financial investments aren't putting forth the effort you desire, stop by today for a financial review. Chuck Verno, 720 North 64th Street in Waco, 254-732-1161. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Howdy, Chet Garner here, professional guide, searching for bears in the wild. But not just any bears, oh no, a particular kind. With hundreds of thousands roaming freely in the wild, yet still hard to spot unless you know the signs. There they are, Baylor bears. If you're a bear enthusiast or even a bear yourself, join me and let's find some bears in the wild.
Join the expedition at baylor.edu/alumni.
Hi, this is Paul Catalina. I recently got engaged to the love of my life, but the most important thing that I had to do before I popped the question was get that perfect ring. And I know nothing about rings. So I went to the wedding ring store, Boozer's Jewelers on Valley Mills Drive. I knew I needed a custom design, and that's exactly what they do. 9 out of 10 of their engagement rings are designed in-house. The entire process took less than a month, and they were great every step of the way. Great options on financing, excellent selection, and talented designers. My fiance and I get nonstop compliments on the ring. I only deserve credit for doing the smartest thing I could, walking into Boozer's and letting them work their magic. Your one-of-a-kind fiance deserves a one-of-a-kind ring, and that's what you get at Boozer's. Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store on Valley Mills Drive.
Welcome back to Sikkim 365 Radio. Want more updates during the day? Follow 365 Sports YT on Twitter.
Championship game Monday night. Georgia, near 2-touchdown favorite. I haven't looked lately at whether it's 13.5 or 15 or whatever it is, but it is a 2-touchdown favorite at this. They are a 2-touchdown favorite at this particular time. So, Kirby Smart, when asked about the rosters, both Georgia and also TCU.
Yeah, I never look at it through the perspective of a lot of people look at it as it's all about, what your kids were rated when they came in. I mean, Coach Dykes inherited a lot of those players and got some, through the portal and things, but you got what you got, and what you do with what you have is what makes you a coach. And he's done a tremendous job with the players that he has and has inherited, and I feel like we've done the same with the ones we've gone out and recruited. So I never get too caught up in how it was built. it's kind of like, okay, you gave me my mold, and now I've got to try to go make something out of it. And you do the best job you can with what you got, and that's what you focus on. So at the end of the day, everybody gets into all those ratings and all those things over and over again. It's about the chemistry of a team, and I would venture to say that these two teams probably have some of the best chemistry across the country.
If they did the polls, which a lot of times,
they got a tremendous team, a tremendous program. He's won.
Stop it. There you go. Thank you very much. If the national championship, and again, a lot of times when you do get the major chunk of the 4 and 5 stars, that surely helps. But if they went by that, then there would be a lot of teams that were in the semifinals, not TCU.
Yeah, well, I mean, and the question that was asked to him, which I left out because you could barely hear it on the teleconference, was the rosters are constructed in a completely different fashion. I mean, Georgia, goes to the 5-star store and just picks what they want, right? And TCU's had to, 14 guys from the transfer portal on this year's roster, and, Sonny Dykes didn't bring in, the majority of the guys. I mean, Gary Patterson built the roster over the years, and then there was attrition from that. So the fact that they're here is that the rosters are different. You mentioned the 2-touchdown spread. Well, that's why there's a 2-touchdown spread almost as much as anything, is because of the way that these rosters are constructed and in the history of these two teams. So yeah, but TCU's kind of defied it. And, that was Kirby Smart's really nice way of saying that, and also trying to avoid I'm afraid of these guys mostly because of that. Like that's what maybe would scare me the most about TCU if I was Georgia, is these guys don't seem to know that they're not supposed to be as good as everybody else. Nobody's told them, or if they have, it just doesn't translate to them.
Oh, I think that's part of why they have a chip on their shoulder, because I think they all know that. Yeah.
Well, and I think if they didn't know it by now, they're one of 2 teams still standing. Mm-hmm. So if they thought that before, they certainly can't possibly believe that now, that they're somehow inferior in any way. And this is part of the benefit of the transfer portal. Without the transfer portal, TCU is not in any way, shape, or form standing in this game. No freaking way. Even if they still hired Gillespie and Riley and Dykes, they're not here without the transfer portal. They're also not here without Gary Patterson's staff and the recruiting job that they did either. So it's a combination of things. Georgia did it. Number 1 recruiting classes, number 2 recruiting classes for, top 5 recruiting classes for consecutive years. TCU, 20 to 30 type of recruiting classes, 20s to 30s, without researching it and knowing the exact numbers, in that vicinity. And then a super duper, number of transfers that have all had major impacts and some great coaching hires. So, it's rosters have been constructed slightly differently, but I don't think that there's this massive gap, as evidenced by the fact that TCU went out and handled their business against Michigan. So I think that Georgia is rightfully the favorite here because of just the entire thing that we've seen. But I think to just rule out TCU entirely is a little bit foolish.
I think it would be very foolish. Kirby Smart also, I think this is ready, Garrett, asked about just what Sonny Dykes and TCU have done.
Yeah, they got a tremendous team, a tremendous program. He's won everywhere he's been. He's done a great job. Their kids believe. They have, I feel like, just reading and listening about them, a lot of similarities to our kids in terms of the culture created there, the way they play, the way they believe. I think I saw a stat, they have the most comebacks in college football, in the fourth quarter. And that shows what your mental makeup is. Their conference, they've been in a lot of tight ball games, and they've won those type ball games, and done an incredible job with what they do. And they create really tough situations defensively, do an incredible job on special teams, have one of the best returners that I've probably ever faced in the return game, and score a lot of points on offense with a Heisman Trophy candidate quarterback. So it's a recipe to be playing for the national championship.
Kirby Smart saying all the right things, but all of what he said is true. Everything that he mentioned about TCU is true. And Sonny Dykes was also asked about the expanded playoffs and how that will affect college football. And, of course, the fact there used to be just 2 teams or no teams in a playoff overall. It's been a while since there wasn't a BCS or now what we have with the college football championship at the playoffs. And here's Sonny Dykes.
Yeah, you know what? I have. I mean, I've thought that way for a long time. There was probably about a 6-hour period at some point in my life in the middle of the night where Mike Leach had actually convinced me it was good for a 64-team playoff. But that's a whole other story. And like I said, I woke up the next day and talked myself out of it. I think 12 is going to be great. I mean, look, I think there's a lot of good football teams that deserve to be in the playoff. And, I've always believed that the cream rises and, the more opportunities that schools, outside of the traditional brands get, the more those schools can become traditional brands. I think if you exclude them, it's hard to break in. And I think this will give a lot of schools, like TCU, an opportunity to get in the mix and show what they're capable of. And, we were fortunate this year to get into the 14 playoff, and we were fortunate to beat a very good Michigan team and advance. And, and our prize is we get to play Georgia now. And so, but I look, you can't help but look at how much fun it's going to be when we get to that 12. And it's going to be, like everything else, it's going to be a work in progress, and there's going to be some things that I'm sure we don't like about that. But at the end of the day, the best thing is it's going to include more people. And I'm a big believer in inclusion. And so I think it's going to be a good thing.
All right. Does TCU's run this year at least allow people to understand even more, Cincinnati last year, why the expansion is a good thing? I know there's still going to be some of those traditionalist or whatever, elitist, oh my God, no. But TCU getting to not just the semifinals, but getting to the championship game, does that help some people understand the importance of this?
I hope so. But, I think the people who are holding out are always going to be holding out. And they're going to use any excuse that they can to show that, so if Georgia beats TCU by 13 points or 15 or whatever, if they cover the spread, they'll say, well, TCU got lucky against Michigan but couldn't beat Georgia, which is not, that's insulting to Georgia and to TCU. Like, maybe Georgia just had a really good day again. Like, maybe TCU ran out of gas. Maybe somebody got hurt that was important in the game. That was the key matchup that they could win. Those are all those things that happen in games and can happen to Georgia as well. Because those same people will say, so say TCU beats Georgia by 15. The narrative
that would be hilarious, man.
But the narrative from those people, the narrative from those people will be, well, this is clearly a Georgia team that was a little bit down and we didn't realize it until the championship game. And you're like, how can a team be down and make it to the championship game? Stop it. Like, that's not the case. It's played between the lines. That's why you do it. But there is always going to be those people. I think the majority of college football fans, and actually the majority of the people who cover college football, realize that this is a good thing and see that the numbers will shift as the game shifts. If anything is proven that moving into conferences or giving people more opportunities, TCU proves that. They were a Mountain West team just a decade ago, and now they're in the national championship. That proves that if you give a team resources and time, they can grow.
Yeah, I think a few different things. It's probably going to need more time to really flesh out people's opinions on the playoff. But some people will probably still use this as a reason as to, why expansion is bad, simply because if TCU were to beat Georgia, then they'll say, well, TCU did that, but they couldn't have done this and won 2 more games. They beat Michigan and Georgia, but in the new format, they would have had to have beaten Florida State in the first round, and then they would have had to have beaten NC State, and then they would have had to have beaten Michigan, and then they would have had to be they're not set up for that. They don't have the blue chips for that. They don't have the depth for that. And I think that's valid in some cases, but I also think in the transfer portal era, a lot of those concerns are thrown to the wayside because you can get depth. You can get star players in more quickly rather than having to just develop full recruiting classes. So, TCU, is an example of the benefits of the transfer portal. It's an example of the benefits of a 4-team playoff. I don't know if it'll be necessarily a great example for the expanded playoff, but I do think it makes a stronger case than it doesn't. It absolutely does. Traditionalists wouldn't have had them even in the mix. It would have just been the top 2 teams playing like always. And here's TCU, number 3, and here they are in this game. And that wouldn't have happened without an expanded playoff. Now, does that mean we see like a 7 seed winning a national title anytime soon? I don't know, but I'm sure as heck glad they're going to have an opportunity to do it. And like I said from the very beginning, no, I don't think that the expanded playoff is going to necessarily mean that the TCUs of the world or schools that aren't typically the Texas Techs, the UCLA, whoever's that aren't typically in that game are going to suddenly, be in that game because it's an expanded playoff, because it will be challenging to have to win multiple games. Like to do what TCU did, but do it 2 times over, albeit you won't be playing necessarily Michigan level or Georgia level in the first and second round per se. But I do think that if you are able to do that, look, if Georgia and Alabama are the teams that are able to do that better than anybody, then what's really different, quite frankly? But if a TCU can go in there and do that, then damn it, they deserve to be in that game. They deserve to be in the national championship game. So they went out, they conquered the road in front of them. And here in a couple years, that road will be a little bit longer. There will be a couple more stops on it. But I think in the era of NIL and transfer portal, it's more doable for a team like TCU now to conquer that mountain than it ever was before. So I'm still all fully on board with it. And quite frankly, watching bowl season, I know Garrett could celebrate like LSU's win, and you're celebrating FSU's win, Paul. And that's all great. That propels them into the next offseason. But there were a lot of games that were not worth watching, man. There was a lot of background noise that had absolutely no meaning behind it whatsoever, that were just on TV because live sports is good for TV. And I do think that shakes that up a little bit, because I think we kind of overrate bowl season a little bit. And I love college football. I love bowl games. But sitting back watching, there was not a lot that to me was really all that appetizing, quite frankly. So I'm all for some more meaningful. It is for teams that are on the way up to get a bowl game for the extra practices as far as that. But you're right. There were some that were just. I'm not saying do away with bowl season. That's important to have the extra practices. I'm saying the entertainment value, though.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and is going to be better.
Background noise is the perfect analogy.
Yeah, and the thing is that if you get 2 teams that are on the way up or feel like they're on the way up, like Kansas and Arkansas feel like they're on the way up, even though Arkansas took a dip this year, I think they feel good about their trajectory. That's a good game. Oklahoma didn't have a great year, but they had something to prove to themselves more than anything else.
Yep.
And
even though they lost, they may have gained something out of it.
FSU's on the way up. LSU's on the way up. Now, Purdue, that's the example. LSU's on the way up. Purdue has a new coach, and everybody's opted out. Yeah. So then you get this bowl game that is in no way entertaining to anybody but Garrett.
And how do you make sure that guys still playing games? Well, kind of smart to say, it's a playoff game now, this Idaho Potato Bowl. So you do want to play in it. But, yeah, I think it's going to be more entertaining. But you'll still have your other bowl games. Like Oklahoma would not be in the playoff. They'd still have their bowl game. It just wouldn't have been against Florida State, because Florida State would be in this expanded playoff.
They would have been right there in the middle of it. All right, we do have, when we come back, we'll have Jim Polzin. He covers Wisconsin men's basketball and also football on the Tanner Mordecai transfer. And then also between that and John Machota, some men's basketball news on last night's games, and also Baylor, according to what's inside of Sikkim365.com, has picked up a commitment from a 7-foot, 5-star center, Yves Missy. And we'll have that and more on him. This is 365 Sports.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive, North 19th Street in Waco, a hidden gem. Are you a craft beer fan? Well, guess what? They've got the best roster of craft beers anywhere, always circulating them, churning it. Great stuff, great winter stuff in there right now. They have the best selection of local craft whiskeys when you're talking about Balcones, Devil's River, TX, Garrison Brothers, all there at Riverbend Liquor and Wine. If it's local from Texas, believe you me, they've got it. If it's not local from Texas, maybe they don't have it, but they know where they can get it for you, or they've got lots of different things all across the board, no matter if you are a beer, whiskey, wine, vodka, anything, they've got it there. Riverbend Liquor and Wine, great customer service, a speedy drive-through window, available on DoorDash. You can't beat it. Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive, North 19th Street, behind the bank.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB, your bank for life. Member FDIC.
Waco Custom Marketplace is your hometown grocery store with a full-service butcher shop and bakery. Hi, this is David Smoak. The Butcher Shop can take your customized orders for seafood, pork, and poultry and custom cut your favorite steaks from bacon wrap fillets to T-bone to bone-in ribeyes. Cut specifically the way you want. They have Norwegian salmon fillets, catfish fillets, sliced ham or turkey and lunch meat, variety of cheese available, and several options of sausage links. Fresh chicken breast or whole chickens, sliced bacon, pork chops, ground beef, marinated beef, and chicken fajitas, and always large briskets available, plus fresh vegetables. So the great product, customer service, and family tradition of the Bauer family continues at Waco Custom Marketplace, open Monday through Saturday. A full-service butcher shop and bakery available. Waco Custom Marketplace, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco, or WacoCustomMarketplace.com.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
Automatic Chef Canteen is a full-service micro-market vending and office coffee provider with state-of-the-art vending equipment, a wide variety of products, and offering custom-fitted micro-market vending office coffee solutions for your employee break room. You want a full break room solution and a workplace oasis? Well, Automatic Chef Canteen, locally owned and operated for over 50 years in Central Texas, also includes in-house mechanics on call 24/7 for fast, reliable service and maintenance. Automatic Chef Canteen, 6900 Imperial Drive in Waco, or online at automaticchefcanteen.com.
Three Nations Brewing Company has 16 different beers on draft with a new beer every Friday. It also offers 2 air-conditioned tap rooms, a large indoor beer hall, a second-floor mezzanine offering a great overview of the brewing company and equipment and patio where you can relax under the shade. Plus, you can now experience the new Three Nations Beer Garden Grill on our shaded patio. Grab a cold beer and enjoy a bite from our freshly prepared and delicious menu. Street tacos, quesadillas, freshly cooked burgers and dogs, and veggie burgers too. Nachos and so much more, all prepared and cooked on site. So come visit the award-winning Three Nations Brewing Company on East Vandergrift off I-35 in Carrollton.
Welcome back to Sikkim 365 Radio. Are you a Sikkim 365 super fan? Then try out our premium subscriptions at Sikkim365.com.
He's a columnist for Badger Extra, Madison.com, Wisconsin State Journal. He covers Wisconsin, the Badgers, the Packers, and more. Jim Polzin joins us on 365 Sports with Paul and Craig. I'm David. And Jim, thanks for your time. We appreciate it. What has been the reaction on the transfer and commitment from Tanner Mordecai?
Nothing but positivity up here for sure. I mean, it's been a wild month. They've gotten commitments from multiple quarterbacks. Nick Evers was kind of the first big splash in the transfer portal for Luke Fickell. That was like a month ago, but I think people understood that he maybe wasn't a ready-made product, and they were probably going to go into the transfer portal and try to get someone more experienced. And then, Tanner Mordecai kind of came along. It's one of those weird things where sometimes guys go in the portal and they sit there for a week or two, and you kind of get your hopes up if you're a fan. This happened very fast. I think Wisconsin fans were kind of stunned by it, but very, very encouraged and excited by what he can do.
He fits well into Phil Longo's scheme. I know that it's been reported about his connection with Phil Longo going back to when he recruited him when Longo was at Ole Miss. But how much have the fans gotten excited about what is a gigantic sea change in the philosophy that was in Madison ever? I mean, they've not ever really run an offense like this, have they?
No, I mean, not really. I mean, you think about this kind of an era here is the Barry Alvarez era, and that goes back to 1990. So we're talking 30 plus years. And I mean, it's not been the same offense their entire time, but it's certainly been a very run heavy offense. And the words air raid have not been in the vocabulary up here. So I think fans are ready for it. I mean, I think if you poll the fans here, they're ready for change, and they're ready for this program got a little stale and complacent, and I think Luke Fickell's come in a really short time and brought kind of an energy, a good vibe, and hiring Phil Longo is that's an eye opener for people up here. But I think we're all kind of just anxious to see how it's going to look, and I've kind of come around to it. I think my first reaction was that can't possibly work in the Big Ten, and now the more you watch it a little bit on YouTube and whatever and hear about it, I think it can work. And I think the thing that Wisconsin fans probably were scared of at first is that they're just going to throw the ball 70 times a game, and I don't think that's Phil Longo's personality at all. He wants to run the ball. They're going to throw the ball a little bit more than they have in the past, but he definitely wants to have a rushing attack that works well and works well in November and December out here.
Jim, very unique experience, watching the Guaranteed Rate Bowl just a couple of weeks ago and seeing Luke Fickell already out there as head coach of Wisconsin. They get the win, obviously. That had to feel good. But what was that experience sort of like on your standpoint, seeing that and fans seeing him already kind of getting underway? And how valuable do you think that was for this program?
Yeah, it was weird is the right way to describe it, because I'm not really sure he was officially the head coach in that game. I mean, he even admitted it. He was kind of the figurehead. And there were times on the sideline where, you could kind of tell he wanted to call a timeout, and yet he was kind of looking to Jim Leonard, and it was, to make sure everybody was on the same page. So it wasn't like a typical head coaching experience where, their call is the only call. It was, the game itself was kind of interesting. I do think it was important for him to do that. It was just such an awkward thing with, 95% of the people around here, myself included, thinking that Jim Leonard was going to get the job. And then, they give it to Fickell, and then it becomes, is Leonard going to stick around as defensive coordinator? And that answer turned out to be no, but, he said he'd stick through the bowl game and serve as a pseudo interim coach. So it was very awkward, but I think it was important for Fickell to kind of be the face of the program going forward. So I'm not sure Jim Leonard wanted that role. I don't think he felt kind of that awkwardness of being the guy when you've got the rug pulled out from under you. So I think that was important. I think it was also important for Fickell to, some coaches when they're hired just kind of ignore that bowl game and just kind of stay away from it. And he didn't. He was very out in front. I think he got to meet a lot of families out there. I think that was important to him. So, again, the guy's been on the job for 30-ish days, 35 days. I don't think he's made a bad move yet. And I think that, the way he handled the bowl game, I think was impressive. Another thing he did was after the game, he went up on stage to collect the trophy, and I think he felt a little off about that because, it wasn't his team that got there. And he called Jim Leonard up there and had him say a few words. So I think that was another move where you're kind of like, all right, this guy's kind of doing the right thing.
There were thoughts that Leonard could end up even on Dave Aranda's staff at Wisconsin. He hired Matthew Powledge of Oregon. So what is next for Leonard?
Yeah, great question. I mean, I honestly thought that Baylor might be a landing spot for him because I know him and Dave got along really, really well. When Jim retired from the NFL, he spent a year kind of shadowing the UW staff, and Dave Aranda was the defensive coordinator at the time. And I know those guys hit it off really well. I know their philosophies are similar. So I thought that might be a place that he landed. But he's going to have a ton of options in NFL. Otherwise, I mean, he turned down the Packers defensive coordinator job 2 years ago, and that might come open again in the next month. So I think that might be an option. I also think there's an option where he sits out for a year and maybe serves as an NFL consultant or something. He's got 3 young boys. He's got a wife. He played the NFL game where, he was kind of bouncing around a little bit, and every January he'd kind of look around and say, where am I going to be next season? I don't think he wants to do that. I think he wants stability for his family. I think that's really important to him. So I don't think he's going to just jump into anything. And, we'll see. He's going to have options. They're paying him for next season. He had a 2-year contract, and Wisconsin's paying him for next season. So he doesn't really have to go anywhere if he doesn't want to. And I really would not be shocked to see him just kind of sit this one out unless the perfect spot came along for him and his family.
I would probably throw USC in that mix right now too, if they make a decision with Alex Grinch. But Jim, how much has Luke Fickell changed the way that they recruit in in Madison in that, look, you've got, I mean, these are two guys out of the portal, but Evers and Mordecai, both from Texas, both via OU too, as well. But how has he changed that? And do you see them being maybe of a more national than regional recruiter now that Fickle's in the fold?
Yeah, it's funny. It's a really good question. And yet he has said multiple times, he said it when he got hired, he said it on signing day, he kind of wants to operate with this 350-mile radius from Madison. And I think what he means there is that that's where most of the guys are going to come from. And Barry Alvarez is very similar too. You know, like I think Barry's famous line was, our heart and soul is going to come from the state of Wisconsin, but our hands and feet are going to have to come from elsewhere because this state produces a lot of linemen, linebackers. It doesn't produce a lot of high-end, skill position guys. And I think Fickle understands that, but I think he wants to hit Chicago. I think he wants to hit Minneapolis, Indianapolis, Detroit, all those areas. But I do like the fact that they've already, gotten into Texas a little bit with these quarterbacks. I think they're going to have to hit Ohio. Ohio's been a state that's been really good to this program under Alvarez, and Fickle's got connections there. So I hope that's an area they hit too. So I think, long story short, I think it's going to end up being recruiting classes are going to end up being where they kind of hit a little bit from everywhere. But I think he's probably right that, the majority of that class is going to come from that 350-mile radius.
Hey, Jim, thank you very much for your time. You'll love Tanner Mordecai, and obviously he's got to go produce or whatever, and just a great young man. We covered him in high school, as I sent the interview to you earlier for you to use it however you want. And thanks for your time. Good luck. Enjoy covering Wisconsin. You mentioned the Packers and Leonard. How about the run that Aaron Rodgers and the Packers are on now, controlling their own destiny?
It's crazy. I ruled them out. It's funny. I wrote about this last week after they beat the Vikings, but I have this mailbag every week, and someone asked me when they were 4-8, is it time to bench Rodgers and play Jordan Love? And at the time, Rodgers had shoulder injury, he had a thumb injury, and I'm like, yes, let's sit him down, and the season's essentially over. Let's see what you have in Jordan Love and go from there. And then, I did kind of a mea culpa after the Vikings game because that sounds like a stupid answer now. They're back in it. And that's the weird thing about the NFL is you get hot at the right time and suddenly you become a scary team if you get in the playoffs. So I don't know how far they're going to go. I think they still have limitations, but the fact that we're talking right now that they control their own playoff fate is, frankly, if you had told me that a month ago, I would have told you were crazy.
Yep. And there's a lot of teams, including one here in Texas, that even
I would love that matchup, guys.
Oh my God! Well, Paul's a lifelong Cowboys fan. I'm not. Neither is Craig. But yeah,
Jim, I wake up. Yeah, go ahead.
Like the matchup for the. I'm sorry. I'm not saying I would like it. That'd be a great matchup for the Packers. I just, I cheer for the story and Green Bay versus Mike McCarthy to go to the Super Bowl or go deep in the playoffs would be a story that I would love to cover,
Jim, I was there at AT&T Stadium the day that Aaron Rodgers hit the unlikeliest pass I've ever seen, and it wakes me up in cold sweats in the middle of the night. So
I thought you were there covering it as a journalist.
Look, there's two parts of me, and that was one of the few times I was like on the elevator going, damn it.
I think that's the difference in the opinions is Jim's looking at it from a journalism point of view. Paul's looking at it from a Cowboys fan point of view.
Also I had to go into that locker room afterwards, and then the answer, you can't ask them, Jim, you know this sometimes in games when you go down to the locker room to cover it and they've lost a tough game, the answer to every question is, well, what do you want? It's crazy. Right. Sports. What are you supposed to ask the Cowboys that you're going to get a good answer with? And they're like, yeah, Aaron Rodgers is alive in the world and plays football. I wish he was a sailboat captain or something and not this, but he's here and ruining my life. What do you want from me? That's kind of the answer you get. And it's hard to even get anything usable because you're like, well, Aaron Rodgers is here, and that's why.
Yep.
Yeah, he's done it. I hope you feel good about this, but he's done that to a lot of teams. It's really not just the Cowboys. So the crazy thing about this run late in the season, he's not played that well. I mean, they've really done this with defense and a running game, and he hasn't had a passer rating. He hasn't had a 300-yard game yet this year, guys. Not one single 300-yard game. How crazy is that?
What?
A guy coming off 2 MVPs. Yeah, I mean, he's been very, I use the word mediocre loosely because he's an NFL quarterback who's, proven it. He's going to be a Hall of Famer, but by his standards, he has been very mediocre this year. And the amazing part is here they are potentially going to go to the playoffs.
And it's the Lions and Packers for a chance to get to the playoffs. Jim, thank you very much. Thanks for your time.
Pleasure,
Jim Polzin, the Wisconsin State Journal, Badger Extra, and also Madison.com. Appreciate his feedback.
Very impressed by Luke Fickell handling the quarterback room the way he already has and set it up so that you not only got the transfer that can play right away, who's played 1 billion games at this point in Mordecai, but you got Evers sitting there waiting right in the wings. Obviously, those are 2 guys that Oklahoma was on, signed both of those guys at different points. They were going to be a part of the Lincoln Riley quarterback factory until, other guys, in Tanner's case, he got beat out because of their transfers. But who beat out Tanner in that? Was that who that would have been?
Spencer, I guess, really.
Yeah,
because
Rattler, yeah.
I mean, he could have. I guess theoretically, because Kyler was there right at the beginning.
Yeah, I think
so
he waited behind Kyler, and then Spencer came
Hurts,
in. So yeah,
where was Hurts in that?
Yeah, Hurts was probably in there a little bit too, right?
Yeah, I don't remember. They just had such a crazy run of quarterbacks.
I think Hurts is the one that hurt the most. That allowed it. Yeah, probably moved him on.
Probably did. But Tanner went on and did his thing at SMU and had a great career. And I think it's funny. Wisconsin fans, not in general, but he just made the mention that there's at least some comments about the air raid and there's various versions of it, but a team that runs it's in the national championship game right now, so it's not that bad if you do it the right way. So I think that will be all fine. And if anything, I think that the way that TCU beat Michigan, I think we're going to see a lot more air raid and things like that going the Big Ten's way. The idea that, like J.J. McCarthy was saying, we're going to line up and run the ball and all that, and TCU's like, oh, you think because we pass a lot that we aren't able to run the ball, and you think because we pass a lot that we can't play defense and smash mouth, and they smashed Michigan right in the mouth over and over again. And so, yeah, the air raid's not this stereotypical, Mike Leach is ruining the game of football or whatever. There's a million different, variations of it depending on the coach, but it's going to be beneficial, I think, especially the way football is going right now.
Yeah, by the way, Phil Longo, a pretty smart guy early on in his Wisconsin tenure, to go into Texas and call Kevin Murray and ask him, about a couple of his guys, and Nick Evers and Tanner Mordecai, and that's their quarterback room right now. And, Dave Aranda, that might be a strategy that you copy. I think that you need quarterbacks. I think you need a second guy who can definitely start for you and push Blake Shapen for the job. And then you need another guy like Nick Evers, who has 4 years of eligibility, that can make up for you missing a quarterback in the 23 class.
Well, go and log on to Sikkim365.com right now, because that's in the works. To some degree, don't have specifics just yet, but that will be soon enough. And Baylor is not, for anybody worried who doesn't pay daily attention to the happenings going on, who follow the program, they are not sitting pat with just Blake Shapen heading into spring football, put it that way.
Well, yeah, and for anyone just to think they would be is just overreaction the wrong way. But all right, when we come back, John Machota covers the Cowboys. Put up a couple of the notes on, I mentioned that. Last night in the Big 12, the 7-footer, I mentioned Yves Missy. He's a 7-foot center. He was down to teams like Texas and Baylor, among others. And he has committed to play at Baylor. 5-star big man. He's the third commit to the class of 2024. Right now is ranked as the number 1 class in the country. He's from Prolific Prep, 7-footer, who is from Cameroon. His brother Steve played college basketball at Harvard for 4 years. And he is playing now at Prolific Prep in Napa, California. So a huge addition as far as a commitment for Scott Drew and Baylor, a 7-footer. And if you look at the team this year, I know he can't play till 2024, but if you look at the team this year, one of the things missing is inside play, an inside threat. Flo Thamba can do so much. They just don't have much right now going on the inside. Now, they got the young man who's very talented, who kind of reminds you of Jonathan Chamachachua, who's, of course, trying to fight back, athletic. But there just aren't many 7-footers anymore, many at all in the college basketball game.
No. Well, I mean, and part of it is that the game has changed and that it's a guard-oriented game now. Basketball's on the outside and not the inside, but the best teams are the ones who have both parts of it. Most of the big recruits now are guards and guys who can shoot threes. But, when you've got an athletic 7-footer, people are going to go for that. Who's going to be the number 1 pick in the NBA draft this year? It's the Victor
Yeah, the story
from France. So.
Teams are trying to tank for him. By the way, Baylor committed to Baylor over Texas, Kansas. All right, Paul, good luck with that. And Stanford. And so, again, Yves Missy commits to Baylor. Now, last night, a couple of notes on Kansas State. Went into Austin with Jerome Tang, longtime Baylor assistant coach, his first year. And here's a quote from him. 116-103. Here's the first thing. Kansas State scored the most points ever by an unranked team in a road win against a top 10 team since the AP poll era began in 1948-1949. There's one. Number two, Kansas State winning the game 116-103. Jerome Tang, after the game, in a game where they win by 13, beat a top 10, like 6th-ranked Texas. His quote, "We gave up 103 points. That's what I'm concerned about."
Yeah, I mean, look, going down the stretch, you may not have a night, and it's wise to think that, where the other team scores 103 and you don't have 116 in your back pocket. You might have 98. So yeah, and he comes from here, and that's defense first, and he's a big part of that philosophy. So, and eventually we'll tweak that a little bit, of course, little bit by little bit at Kansas State. But what was also interesting last night, it's a great win for Kansas State and Jerome Tang. They're playing in Waco on Saturday, 5 o'clock tip at the Farrell Center. Kansas beat Texas Tech 75-72 as well. Oklahoma State beat West Virginia Monday night. Oklahoma State now love what Mike Boynton does. West Virginia drops to 0-2. And again, Baylor at home Saturday against Kansas State, 5 o'clock, and tonight they host TCU, and this will be a battle tonight at the Farrell Center. Whoa, that's my headsets. Will be a battle tonight at the Farrell Center, an 8 o'clock tip. TCU and Jamie Dixon, they have themselves one hell of a good team. Great win last night for Baylor against Oklahoma on the road. Women's basketball, Nikki Collin. And Baylor winning last year. They lost that game. They were 0-2. This year they start conference play at 2-0. Anything else on the Big 12 in basketball? Nope.
When we come back, John Machota, the Cowboys end their regular season, against Washington, who might start former North Carolina star quarterback. How? That's next and more. 365 Sports. Ideal MRI, Dr. Rob Maxey and his staff can do two things for you, and that's all you want, really, when you go to get some sort of a picture or evidence of something that's an injury, whether it's to your back, your shoulder, to your leg, to your knee, to part of maybe your ankle, anywhere your abdomen. You want evidence. Ideal MRI has what you need, the MRI machine, state-of-the-art technology. And then on top of that, MRIs can be expensive. The average $1,100, $497 or less every single time. Not once, and the next time is twice as much or 3 times as much. It's $497 every single time, $497 or less, and they'll help you with whatever you need as well, on top of that, with your insurance claim. Dr. Rob Maxey and his great staff, idealmri.com.
Cars priced right, both day and night. Average your car in Texas. Trucks built for you, red, white, and blue. Average your car in Texas. Cars that zoom with lots of room. Average your car in Texas. Count on us, a dealer to trust. Average your car in Waco, Texas.
Parenting is full of surprises.
You never know what to expect.
So after our son was born, I called my Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent to set up a life insurance policy in case something happened to me.
Sawyer is now 2.
And we'll soon have a sister. There's no one else I would trust with protecting my family.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Do you or your kids get nervous about going to the dentist? Stonewood Dental, Dr. Steve Childress, he can help.
I've spent a career taking care of patients who as children had bad experiences, and now they're adults that hate going to the dentist. If I get a kid at 3 years old and they come every 6 months and it's a happy experience, it's normal for them. Now they have an accident at 6 or 7 or 8 at school. Now they have a broken tooth or a trauma, and they have to come here They're used to lights. They're used to water in their mouth. They're used to experience. They already trust us. It's amazing what we can do with that kid without it being a negative thing. But if I see a 6 or 7 or 8-year-old that's never been to the dentist, and now they have a trauma or an unfortunate unexpected toothache, it's harder to do that for that kid and it not be somewhat of a negative experience. So bottom line is I try to teach kids and adults and teenagers and everybody the way I'd want my family treated, which is where it's a necessary part of life. You just take care of it. It doesn't have to be that big a deal.
Learn more, stonewood-dental.com.
One size fits all. That may be all right for an adjustable belt or cheap sunglasses, but when it comes to your financial needs, no one wants a one-size-fits-all strategy. Cam Heathcott, your Edward Jones financial advisor, knows that his most important goals are yours. That's why we take the time to understand your needs, knowing you. That's how Edward Jones makes sense of investing. Cam Heathcott in Conroe at 936-756-7717. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
There are 26 letters in the alphabet, over 600,000 words in the dictionary, and just 3 of them said together can change everything. Let's order pizza. Those 3 words lead to dough made from scratch and 3 fresh signature cheeses that blanket golden crust in a heavenly melt on Marco's Pizza that'll blow your mind. So visit Marcos.com to order and stop by Marco's Pizza in Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
Stepping into the boots of a U.S. Army officer can add confidence and leadership skills to your son or daughter's career path. See all the things they can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
Welcome back to Sikkim 365 Radio. It's time for our weekly segment with John Machota of The Athletic, brought to you by Pioneer Steel and Pipe, where customer service is their main focus, and best in metal, steel, and pipe for large or small projects, with 2 locations in Waco and Bryan. Family owned and operated since 1943.
We will get to John Machota here momentarily. Paul and him are having a conversation off to the side on Florida State football, but it would be nice if we would have John, let's just go ahead. You and Paul talk Seminoles, for God's sakes, while we're entering the intro to your segment.
Well, no, I didn't. I thought we had a little bit more time. Like, Craig's still in the bathroom.
It's 5:34.
So. Well, yeah. Well,
I'm the one. Hey,
you
don't
even. Listen, buddy, you can't.
Okay.
You cannot even.
Yes, I can. Because both you guys give me glares when we have to take a break now.
Okay. Look, if somebody has pimples all over their face and then makes fun of somebody who has one on their nose, then maybe that's what I'm just saying,
John, Florida State won. Their 10 wins good, right? It's great. I know you and Paul, you've suffered through the bad years of late.
We have, but we were just talking about how they ended up having to play their bowl game right as the Cowboys are playing the Titans. And thankfully, the Cowboys were playing a Titans team that wasn't very good. So I was able to keep up with the Florida State game until they secured the victory over the Sooners. And so, yes, I'm happy getting that 10 wins. That's a big deal.
It is. It's a nice jump in the ACC. They need Florida. Florida State just needs to be good. All right, so the Cowboys in Washington. I saw where Sam Howell's going to start, I think, for Washington. Obviously, they have nothing to play for because Ron Rivera didn't realize how important that game was last week. And the Cowboys might have something to play for. Will this kind of be everyone's scoreboard watching?
Yeah, for sure. That will definitely happen. Being in the locker room today and at practice, you're not hearing a lot of the scoreboard watching talk. It's we need to get to 13 wins. We need to beat Washington and, do what we have to do. And so, I don't see any way that they would sit there and go, oh, looking at the scoreboard, Eagles are up 14 with only like so many minutes, let's say 5 minutes to go. And, let's pull back out of the game. This doesn't matter now. Like they're going to go and try and play to win the game. And then we'll see where it goes from there. But I think getting to 13 wins would mean a lot to them. And so you just want to make sure you would like to get through that game pretty clean and avoid any injuries and things of such. But if everything I gather as of today, they're playing they're do everything that they can to win that game.
Well, John, I mean, the Eagles are in the same position and they're playing at the same time of the day. So there can't be any kind of like waiting and watching the scoreboard. Like maybe if the Eagles got done 15 minutes before the Cowboys did, then the Cowboys could go, all right, well, maybe we can pull off the stick. But at that time, you really can't, right?
No, for sure. And I mean, let's be honest. I mean, I probably look at the point spread a little bit too much, but I mean, you're talking about a game where, yeah, even with Sam Howell starting, the Cowboys are going to be favored by probably about a touchdown, maybe a little bit more. But you look at both the games that the Cowboys need to get the 1 seed or even just win the division. I mean, the Eagles are favored by 2 touchdowns over the Giants. Like whether the Giants play Daniel Jones or not, the fact that they're going to go back to probably looking a lot more like the Eagles we've seen most of the season. Like, I don't think that game's going to be particularly close anyway, whether they're, trying their hardest or not. I just think the Eagles are such a better team. And the same thing with the 49ers-Cardinals game. I mean, for even one of those games to, go in the Cowboys' favor, a lot is going to have to happen. There probably would have to, they would probably both have to go to several backups. And I just don't see it being realistic. And I think at the end of the day, the Cowboys aren't going to say that, but they probably feel that way too, that, it's probably highly unlikely, but hey, we got to week 18 and we still have a chance. And, there's many weeks ago, it didn't even look like there would be a chance. So you just got to worry about yourself and do everything that you can. And to be honest with you, like I look at the offensive line for the Cowboys, like they really need that group to play a game together. I mean, especially like, you don't know, like even with Biotish expected to come back for the playoffs, you don't know how effective he might be. You might need Connor McGovern to sit there and play half a game, 3/4 of a game, maybe even a full game at center. And you might need Jason Peters to be out there at left. There's plenty of reasons to play. Now, hey, if you got some guys that are dealing with some injuries that you want to give them some rest, like a Leighton Van Esch, he probably could play if you absolutely wanted him to, but, give him another week and stuff. I get that. But in terms of Dak and CD and all those guys are going to play.
Yeah. And Philadelphia has here in the last 2 to 4 weeks seen not only Hurts go down, miss a couple of games, Lane Johnson out, a huge part of what they do. That'd be like if the Cowboys lost Zach Martin. I know the Cowboys have had offensive line injuries, but Lane Johnson's a different animal. Maddox is out. Do you feel like maybe there's an attrition issue with Philadelphia, or do you just feel like they're kind of cruising because they had enough space to do that until now this weekend?
Yeah, they were cruising up until these last couple of weeks because I don't think that, especially after you look at the Cowboys Eagles game with Minshew, I think they were pretty confident after seeing that we probably can beat the Saints at home, without Jalen Hurts. And, Minshew didn't play well. Heck, look at the way that the first half went. And so now you're in a spot where you're like, well, we have to play Jalen. We have to win this game. We can't sit here. And what a collapse that would be, that you should have. There's no reason you shouldn't win this division, and then you lose your last 3 games, and then now all of a sudden, your rival potentially has the number 1 overall seed, and if you play them in the playoffs, you got to go to their place. Like how many? It just would be so. The Cowboys are obviously criticized for the way that they've played during the backstretch of last season, and then the way they played these last few games, and going into the playoffs. What kind of momentum does Philly have if they sat there and lost their last 3 games, blew the chance to have the overall number 1 seed? That's not great, but. Frankly, I'm just interested to see what Jalen Hurts does because we don't know how healthy that shoulder is. They obviously want him out there to try and win that game, but we don't know where that level is. And if he's not playing at that MVP level, I don't look at Philadelphia as being a better team than the Cowboys.
Yeah, John, both these teams, look, the teams that are all vying for that number 1 seed, the 49ers could certainly use a bye. They've been ravaged by injuries, but seemingly navigated through it really well. And they get a Cardinals team this week that is absolutely literally on its last legs, especially the quarterback position. The Eagles really need it badly. And the Cowboys, I would say, even though they've got guys in place and they're not near as hurt as the other ones, the secondary alone, just in getting some kind of chemistry and something going there, would be really important for them to have a bye week.
Yeah, that's the thing. Every single team is going to take the chance to get that bye, and then more importantly, to play at home. That's the thing with the Cowboys. The chance to play at home throughout the playoffs, how big that would be for them. Let's not act like they've always had this great home field advantage at AT&T Stadium. They haven't, but this year they certainly have. They've won their last eight games at home. A chance to somehow back into that position where even if they didn't get they'd have to beat the Eagles, but even if they didn't get the 1 seed, let's say they were the 2 and San Francisco got the 1, they didn't get the bye. The fact that they'd even get a playoff game at home would be so huge for them. And I know that mathematically your chances improve quite a bit if you get to play at home. Now, I know this is a Cowboys team that lost at home last year in the postseason, but they would love to be able to play their first playoff game at AT&T Stadium, but I personally don't think that's going to happen. I think they're going to be going to Tampa Bay and facing off against Tom Brady and having to beat him in Tampa, which I think they can do and they'll be favored to do. But there is still that possibility. It's small, but there is still that possibility that they could get a home game.
John, I mentioned that in the AFC, you look at some of the quarterbacks, good young stars with Mahomes and Allen and others, Justin Herbert and Burrow. In the NFC, it looked like it was okay, and then all of a sudden Brady and Tampa Bay find a way to get in, and Rodgers is right there circling. Does that matter at all, you think, when you look at the pecking order in the NFC?
It does. I mean, you don't want to play Aaron Rodgers in the playoffs. You don't want to play Tom Brady in the playoffs. Obviously, I mean, they've been there and done that. And it's going to be hard to beat those guys. But at the same time, you look at the teams around those two quarterbacks, and it's just not the typical. I mean, you're not following if you think this is the same Packers team that Aaron Rodgers has had and led deep into the playoffs in the past. This is not the same Bucs team that Tom Brady led to the Super Bowl a couple years ago. There is the part of that where you also, as much as those two guys are the boogeyman and everyone's scared of them, there is a part of it where you got to also we have the better team on paper. We should beat this team. Now, if it comes down to, a late game, whatever they, final drive, like most playoff games do, then hey, yeah, you're going to be a little nervous, but I just keep going back to the fact of you're not going to back into a Super Bowl. So either you make a Super Bowl run or you don't. And if you're going to make one, you're going to have to go through some tough teams. And you know what? Maybe it'll be good for the Cowboys if they have to go to Tampa Bay and finally beat Tom Brady. Maybe that's the type of thing that is the jet fuel that gets this team to go on a run that we haven't seen since 1995. Maybe going and beating Brady will do more for them than not having to play somebody and playing a team that you're supposed to. Maybe that'll be the jumping off point that they need, and that'll motivate, or I shouldn't say motivate them. They're motivated, but maybe be the springboard for them to go on a run that we haven't seen in a long time.
John Machota, theathletic.com on the Cowboys, and, of course, their game with Washington. Does Washington, do you feel like just with how they're just saying, white flag, we screwed up? And what would have happened if McCarthy had ever answered the question the way Rivera did?
It would be one of the biggest stories this week with the Cowboys for sure. He would be getting torched over it, but I think a lot of coaches would. I just think that Washington has fallen into a place that, let's be honest, that Jerry Jones would ultimately hate, and that place is a place where nobody cares about really what you do. And I just get that sense that that's how most NFL fans feel about Washington right now, that they don't move the needle, so no one really talks about them. But I think if it was any of the teams in the playoff race right now, if their coach had said that, I think it'd be a huge story right now. And certainly, if Mike McCarthy had said that, fans would be ripping him right now, no question. I mean, it'd be one of those things people would be talking about. How can you even have this person still be your head coach? I mean, it would be very bad.
When I heard that, the disappointment of losing to Cleveland in a home game, I was like, wait a minute. I had to make sure the question was asked to make sure that Rivera and now I was, it's like Paul, you and I and Craig, they're a mess, man. That whole organization franchise is an absolute dumpster fire across the board. Unbelievable. Thank you, John. Appreciate your time. Have fun this weekend. John Machota, theathletic.com on the Cowboys. The NFL last regular season week coming up this weekend, and then the playoffs begin. It is a great 5 weeks, 4 weeks, 4 weeks, 3 weeks. How many weeks in the playoffs?
Well, it ends in the second week in February.
Yeah, so I guess it is about 4 weeks of games. Cowboys trying to break a long and agonizing stretch of not being in the NFC Championship game since they won the Super Bowl back in 1995.
See, that's the thing that I think a lot of Cowboy fans can't get to first. Like, they want to be back in the Super Bowl. Like, it's not like you've lost a couple of NFC championships and you've been one game away. You've not even been there. I mean, you've won 3 playoff games in almost 26 years. So, and none of them back-to-back. Like, you've not won, which means you don't get the NFC Championship game, but they've not won 2 playoff games of those 3 back-to-back in any year. So that's been a huge problem for them for a long, long time. And every time you think they've got a team that's set up to do it, they either draw the worst possible matchup for themselves in the first game they play or the second game they would play, like against the 49ers last year, worst possible matchup for them, and then they don't even show up for it anyway. So it's been inexplicable how they've had teams that 53 for 53, 24 teams in the league would trade them, right? Maybe 27. Maybe 29 sometimes, would trade their roster 53 for 53 for the Cowboys over that 26-year span. There have been times that have happened, and they're just not good.
Been a long, agonizing stretch for the Cowboys since they won 3 out of 4 in 95 the last time. All right, when we come back, Paul Catalina's Top 5. This is 365 Sports. Waco Custom Marketplace, New Year, all the holiday stuff, hams and turkeys, gone. It doesn't mean you still can't get those if you want, but what they have is a full service butcher shop and a full service bakery. The bakery with all the sweets and treats you want, fresh baked bread, fresh baked kolaches, and then whatever is left of the kolaches, if they put them, they seal them, they put them in one of those freeze-dried bags and put them in the freezer. You can get those and take one out as you want, whenever you want. But let's talk about the full-service butcher shop. Pork, yes. Poultry, yes. Seafood, yes. They have Norwegian salmon fillets that are just absolutely delicious. They have shrimp if you want them. Lobster tails as well. But let's discuss what you like, if you do, when it comes to steaks. You like your steaks an inch, inch and a half, inch and a quarter, whatever thickness you want, whatever grade of steak you want, USDA, and they will do that for you. Whether it's a bone-in ribeye, a ribeye, whether it's a T-bone steak, or maybe even New York strip or bacon wrap filet. You call them, you tell them what you want, they'll cut it for you, they'll let you know when it's ready, and you go pick it up and you have what you want for your steaks for the weekend and or whatever that might be. Also, seasoning, sauces, marinades, and more. Charcoal if you want it. Waco Custom Marketplace, your hometown grocery store at 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco.
Howdy, Chet Garner here, professional guide, searching for bears in the wild. But not just any bears, oh no, a particular kind. With hundreds of thousands roaming freely in the wild, yet still hard to spot unless you know the signs. There they are, Baylor bears. If you're a bear enthusiast or even a bear yourself, join me and let's find some bears in the wild.
Join the expedition at baylor.edu/alumni.
Hi, this is Paul Catalina. I recently got engaged to the love of my life, but the most important thing that I had to do before I popped the question was get that perfect ring. And I know nothing about rings. So I went to the wedding ring store, Boozer's Jewelers on Valley Mills Drive. I knew I needed a custom design, and that's exactly what they do. 9 out of 10 of their engagement rings are designed in-house. The entire process took less than a month, and they were great every step of the way. Great options on financing, excellent selection, and talented designers. My fiance and I get nonstop compliments on the ring. I only deserve credit for doing the smartest thing I could, walking into Boozer's and letting them work their magic. Your one-of-a-kind fiance deserves a one-of-a-kind ring, and that's what you get at Boozer's. Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store on Valley Mills Drive.
From the first workout to the last practice, sports is an incredible and rewarding challenge. Hi, this is Dan Ingham with the First National Bank of Central Texas, and we're proud to support each athlete, every parent, and our educators. From families, small businesses, to the biggest industry, we're here to help. With remarkable products like our free First mobile app, we've got banking ideas that fuel big dreams. That's the First National Bank of Central Texas. Familiar faces making local decisions.
Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
Shorty's Pizza Shack at 12th and Bagby is a homegrown, locally owned pizza place that's out of this world. Everything from the dough, the sauce, the sausage topping is made fresh in-house. Not to mention the amazing pizza pillows, the chicken wings are to die for. Try the Sikkim sauce, chili cheese fries or tots, plus great specials on food and drink every single day. Shorty's is also the perfect spot to watch the game with your friends. Shorty's Pizza Shack at 12th and Bagby. Tell them Paul sent you by.
Automatic Chef Canteen is a full-service micro-market vending and office coffee provider with state-of-the-art vending equipment, a wide variety of products, and offering custom-fitted micro-market vending office coffee solutions for your employee break room. You want a full break room solution and a workplace oasis? Well, Automatic Chef Canteen, locally owned and operated for over 50 years in Central Texas, also includes in-house mechanics on call 24/7 for fast, reliable service and maintenance. Automatic Chef Canteen, 6900 Imperial Drive in Waco, or online at automaticchefcanteen.com.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive, North 19th Street, right behind the bank, is a hidden gem in Waco. If you're a fan of bourbon, especially local Texas bourbons, that's where you gotta go. Balcones, TX, Devil's River, whatever it is, they've got it. Riverbend Liquor and Wine, plus the best selection of craft beers in Waco, seasonally churned out throughout the year. Whether it's spring, summer, fall, or winter, Riverbend Liquor and Wine, best selection of craft beers, a speedy drive-through window, and excellent customer service. Find out more on Instagram or just go by and see them. Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street behind the bank.
This is Paul Catalina's Top 5 at 5:55.
Top 5 teams on shaky ground in 2023. These are teams that, look, and I don't know, like, there's one of them that might be kind of up for debate, but it's kind of been, an offseason of uneven news, or even going back into the regular season of at best uneven news. So number 5, Houston. It just did not. I mean, they closed better than they started, that's for sure, at Houston. But Dana Holgerson's got to get his arms around that. There were just things that happened all through last year that, really kind of make you think of the last year of Gary Patterson, where you've got infighting, the whole world's against you. Dana Holgerson makes it seem like none of it's his fault. It's on this, it's on that. And it just was so unbalanced, uneven at Houston. And they're entering a new conference next year with the Big 12 becoming a Power 5 team. It's probably not totally imperative on him to do very well in that first year, but I do think he needs to show that team belongs there right away and doesn't have a huge mountain to climb as they go in.
Yeah, they won their bowl games. So they at least finished on a nice note. But earlier in the season, it definitely seemed like that thing was barely, hanging on at the seams. When you got guys getting into fights on the sidelines like we saw so publicly, and you're losing football games. Still, however, this is a team that lost by 3 points to Texas Tech in a barn burner of a game. Lost to Tulane by 3 points. It lost to SMU by 7 by 14, a crazy shootout, 77-63. Remember that game? That was nuts. And lost to Tulsa by a touchdown. So, outside of that SMU game, which they still scored 63 points and lost because they gave up 77, they played everybody but Kansas pretty tight. Got a nice win over UTSA. Yes, you'd expect Houston to beat UTSA given where they are at levels, but there's at least room. I say all that to say they weren't that far away from being much better record-wise, and they ended on a win, as I mentioned, in the bowl game. So, we'll see, but they're definitely not riding a whole lot of momentum, that's for sure. And I do think that Dana is enough of a lightning rod that if they have some of those same types of issues next year, then I do think that you have to start kind of going, all right, like how long are we going to do this little, tug of war here? And especially given that, look, this isn't little P5 Houston now, too, because it's the next guy that they hire. If they hire a guy in the next few years because Dana doesn't work out, they're going to be shooting the same way that Baylor shoots and TCU and everybody else, when they go after a head coach. So there's higher expectations now. They can't have a American Athletic Conference, AAC, expectations, all due respect. They got to bump that up a notch. So, yeah, I think Dana's somebody that's got to be very confident in what they're putting out there as a product next year.
Also, we're kind of in the post-Urban Meyer era of coaches now where you can't just be a jerk and then write it off as this is how I am.
Gary Patterson.
Gary Patterson. Like, that's just not playing the way it is. And so And I don't know if Dana Holgorsen is or not. I just know that what I've seen, the last couple years is a little.
He has a reputation.
Yeah. You can't just be like, this is how I am. I'm the coach. You can't touch me. And I think the guy who's at the top of this list also needs to learn that lesson in spite of the fact that he's got a ring on his finger 8-9 years ago. Number 4, West Virginia. Neil Brown is kind of the opposite of Dana Holgorsen. I think Neil Brown is kind of the nice guy coach. He's kind of unassuming. He is kind of falling into that, Matt Wells category, though, at Texas Tech, where Matt Wells is a good coach and is going to be a good coach a lot of places that he goes. He just wasn't what Texas Tech needed at that time. They weren't good for each other. I'm feeling the same way about Neil Brown in West Virginia and just the way that things have gone transfer portal-wise for that team. And Ren Baker's there as the new athletic director. Obviously, Neil Brown has some runway this year to get it right. But, again, how long does Ren Baker want to sit there and cycle through this when he can make a hire that's one of his guys?
Yeah, I mean, how often do new ADs come in and football coach just stays there forever after that?
Yeah.
And even if you were to give me an example, show me how many games that coach won. I bet it's a bunch. Not what Neil Brown's putting out there right now, which is not even making a bowl game this year, and not even really feeling like they ever even sniffed one, quite frankly. I mean, there was a sour mood, I think, as the season kind of went along around Morgantown. Even, you get the Baylor win relatively, the middle of the year to earlier part of the year. And it's like, I remember looking at the responses, and there were some West Virginia fans that were like, awesome. But it wasn't like what you would think. You think like, man, big Thursday night win, Big 12 at home, close game, all that. And there wasn't the level of excitement that I expected at all. And I was like, wow, things really are bad up there right now. And I did a podcast interview a few weeks later, and just the vibe I got was, just we want something new and different and a change here. And so, I mean, Neil Brown's, there's no denying he's walking into this. He's a dead man walking if things don't change in a major way. Obviously, Graham Harrell's now gone. JT Daniels is out the door. So, I know they feel like they've got Martial. They'll be like the next big thing at quarterback. So we'll see how that goes. But, they're in a must-win position heading into the next year for sure.
Yeah. Number 3, Clemson. Now, this team is on the most solid of the shaky ground, in my opinion, because they are Clemson and they are very established. But something is strange there where, look, the number one recruit that they had, to follow up Trevor Lawrence, DJU, didn't work out, transferred out. Kate Klubnik's the starter. I think that's actually going to probably work out pretty well for Clemson over the whole of his career. He's a good player, and has a lot of skills that he showed, but, he's still got to, be a full-time starter and go through the attrition of a full year. They still have Will Shipley, who they didn't give the ball enough against Tennessee early on to keep in that game, and that was a mistake. But there's just something weird about what's going on at Clemson. And I can tell you, I've watched a lot of Clemson games over the years, and I've never once thought that the head coaching was an issue until the Orange Bowl the other night. And it was just one of the most uneven, poorly coached games I've ever seen Dabo Swinney do. And then he has these, like these moments like where he had he had to ask the NIL question, and he, Bible thumped a little bit instead of just answering a direct question. That's just weird stuff that doesn't fit what Clemson's been for so long, and that's why I put them in this category. Now, look, he could shake that all off, and they could go run through the ACC again, but the ACC is getting better around them, so they got to be careful because it's not just their league to win anymore.
11-3.
Yeah, I'll say this respectfully. I do think you have a bit of anti-Dabo bias because you're an FSU guy, which is fine. I'm not judging you on that at all. But I do think you're also very accurate on some of the concerns. So, I think that it's probably a bit overblown on some people's parts because that's what they want. They want this to be the ground cracking underneath Dabo's feet. But there are also reasons to see, like, is that a crack developing? Like, I think that's a crack. Oh, DJU, that was a major crack. And now you start to look at, some other areas. And I know there's been a lot of chatter about Dabo and the whole, like, keep it in-house with the staff and keep it in-house. Everything's Clemson. And, meanwhile, other programs are going out and they're getting new ideas. They're picking coaches from across the country that played in a different style of ball to get some freshness in there. And I think they do need to refresh in a bit.
Well, and that's what they did. Like when they hired Brent Venables, that took them from being a good team to a great team. Right. That's what they did.
Yeah. And so since then, really, we've seen just in-house. And so, I do think they need a bit of a refresh. I do think Klubnik will be very good. Ultimately, you definitely see some of the good and some of the bad in that last outing, to be sure. I also give Tennessee a lot of credit as well. But like, the thing with Will Shipley is like, how many times are you going to give it to him? Like, I totally get where you're coming from. It's like, he's all they have. I mean, he was like all they had, and you can't give it to him 50 times. You'd love to. You probably would have fared better, but like he's still got some time left to play out. So
I guess my wasn't the amount of carries he had; it was why they waited,
distributed the way they were.
Yeah, like why not get him involved early and then make Tennessee go?
It was alarming, like just how much he's the only thing that they really seem to have that was consistently that you could be reliable and could make an impact for them offensively. So, yeah, I do think, any other program would love to have Clemson problems, and 11-3 would be a bad year, and, playing in a big bowl game and all of that. But there are some cracks in the armor that are starting to develop for sure. And I don't think the NIL thing, I think I don't know what that was in his mind, if he thought that was super funny, he had to have, or what else that really was as far as how he really feels. But that is something that is just one of those, like, keep that stored away in the back of your mind as things kind of move forward, his whole handling of that side of things.
All right, on Will Shipley, he had 210 carries. Bijan Robinson, with another guy in the backfield with him, had 258 carries and missed a game.
Yeah. And, with Will Shipley, it's just that in that particular game, I'm like, look, this is where you kind of need him, and you've got some time to get over it. Like, maybe you give him a couple more carries, but it was, we had a couple touches early on in the game, and then it was like a whole quarter where they were trying to do other things, and then in the fourth quarter when they were losing and had to get back in it, then they start feeding the rock to Will Shipley, and I'm like, well, I mean, do that earlier. And let me be clear, I do have a little bit of Clemson bias. It's not, or anti-Dabo bias. It's just he kind of annoys me, but I respect him as a coach. And like I said before, the thing that bothers me about him as an FSU fan is I couldn't figure, how are we going to get a better coach than this guy? How are you going to do better? Because he's so good at coaching, and then lately he just doesn't seem to have his fastball anymore.
Yeah, I mean, they lost a couple games that they clearly lost, and you can look at that South Carolina game, and that could have, that obviously was a close loss there. That makes things look a little bit different as well. But, handled their business in the ACC championship game, had no problem whatsoever with North Carolina, so you'd still take that over the alternative any day. But, yeah, I mean, there's definitely – nobody's got him on a hot seat, but everybody's watching, like, his NIL comments or the quarterback handling or, just any number of things, staff hires, and you are starting to go like, that could all start to really add up if you're not careful with it. And I think that everybody's kind of on the same page there.
The second coach on this list kind of falls in the same boat as Dabo in that I kind of feel like, are they over it? Are they over this whole thing and the way that it's changed? Because they are old school dude, and it's Mike Gundy in Oklahoma State. They've lost so many players, including their starting quarterback, who, as you saw without him this year, they were nothing on offense. And Mike Gundy, it's kind of like Jimbo Fisher. If you're not good on offense, like that's Mike Gundy's thing, right? Like, what are you doing? And it's just weird right now. They keep losing transfers, and that was a program that was a hair's breadth away from the Big 12 title a year ago and really looked loaded for bear to make a run again. Injuries ravaged them this year, and then after that, it's just like this thing is falling apart.
I don't know what to make of the situation in Stillwater right now. Like you, I'm kind of searching for what's really true, because what you're saying is what it seems like. It seems like Mike Gundy has no real desire to be there anymore, and we know he's tried to leave in the past, but hey, a lot of coaches have tried to leave a lot of different places. There's only so many of those jobs where you just want to stay forever, but he has been there a really long time. And, I get the sense from the fan base, too, that they're just kind of over it at this point. His shenanigans, they dealt with the I'm a man, I'm 40, the OAN shirt, like just various little rambles, that he's gone, or rants that he's gone on, including most recently after that bowl game when he was, I think, poorly handling the exchange with that reporter, and I think just lashing out at a guy he could lash out against, because I don't think he would have done that against somebody that would have yelled back at him, quite frankly. So I don't like that.
He wouldn't have done that to Barry Trammell.
No, absolutely not. I don't like that kind of like tough guy thing. If you can back it up and all that, and I'm sure Mike Gundy in his own way is a tough guy, but that was very much a guy taking advantage of his position as the head coach in that situation. There's a lot of things that could grind your gears if you're an Oklahoma State fan, and I definitely see, his point of view too, where he's been somewhere a really long time, and maybe he just feels like he's tapped out. Maybe he feels like he's done what he can do. I don't know, but it certainly doesn't feel like, if you were to peg, is he there in 3 years if you had to put money on it? I think you're saying no. I don't think that you think that he is, right?
Well, I would have said that 5 years ago.
Right. So, but now at this point, it's like, really, what is the future there? Mm-hmm. It just feels like it's coming to a boiling point, but we'll see.
Yeah. And number one, Texas A&M. We knew this anyway. They're 5-7. The recruiting hasn't suffered. They still are going to have a great recruiting class. Obviously not as good as the number one class they had last year, but a lot of those guys, several of those guys are gone. But I just don't know how the culture situation is going to work out there with the cantankerous four that they have in Jimbo Fisher, Bobby Petrino, DJ Durkin, and Steve Addazio. And I'm not even mentioning other guys on staff, but like those are guys that, Steve Addazio is not a head coach in college football after 3 tries because he can't build a successful culture. DJ Durkin is not a head coach in college football because his negligence led to a player's death. Bobby Petrino is not a head coach at the highest level of college football anymore, not because of his knowledge, but because his negligence and his attitude led to bad things happening to him and around him, and he's always got one foot out the door, as UNLV fans know after 3 weeks anyway. And Jimbo Fisher's a guy who's kind of stuck in a circle of, well, I did this well 9 years ago. Well, the world changes a lot in 9 years, man. So I just don't know how they build the culture with a staff like that. And maybe I'm wrong, and this is from the outside looking in, but, I would have, if I'm Jimbo Fisher, gone for a guy who is maybe a little bit more upbeat energy-wise and has some juice behind him, as opposed to a guy like Bobby Petrino, who's clearly on his last coaching legs.
He didn't want to hire him.
Yeah.
He didn't want to hire somebody to call plays. So, I'm not saying he didn't want to hire Petrino. When you look at all the other options, he did not even want to have to do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. On the one hand, I was saying earlier, I just think culturally it kind of is a bad fit when you add up all the pieces. It's not, if it was just Bobby Petrino, okay, but you add in, other names as well that they've chosen to go with on that staff, and it's just kind of like, if other teams did this, like how badly would they get raked over the coals? You know what I mean? I think Bobby Petrino is obviously a fantastic football coach. I mean, he knows way more about it than I ever will. And I think that he knows how to coach ball, but I do wonder just the pieces, how well they fit together. And maybe they fit really well. I mean, I don't for one second think that this is automatically going to be a massive failure of a hire. I probably came across that way somewhat earlier, but I don't think it's guaranteed to not work out. I just have my questions about whether or not it's going to work out. It's like any other coaching hire in that way. I understand, but I don't not think that he knows football. I just don't know culturally, yes, and kind of how the characters work together here, if that's like the missing piece for A&M to get over the hump offensively and as a team. I just have my reservations about that, but I will gladly sit back and eat my popcorn like everybody else and wait to see it either completely combust like it could or turn into, Jimbo's saving grace ultimately.
Yeah, look, and I hope it works out. I just don't. In my mind, I just can't see it. And again, it's not about the X and O of it. They've got those guys can all X and O. Everybody can draw it up on the board. Everybody can coach it out. But it's about more than that, as A&M saw this year.
Power struggles and back behind the scenes, yes, very much so. There's reasons to have questions about that. But Jimbo had to have known that making the hire when he did. So we'll see.
All right, good stuff. Appreciate Matthew Powledge being a part of the show, Jim Polzin on Wisconsin, along with much more. And tomorrow we'll have a little bit of what happens tonight in the Big 12, including that game, Baylor and TCU. Jerome Tang of Kansas State, head basketball coach, will join us tomorrow, along with Max Olson, Mickey Spagnola, and a few others, too. Thanks to Jacob Wilson, Jack McKenzie, Emery Winter, Levi Caraway, Garrett Ross. Thank you, Garrett. Appreciate you. Look at all those logos up in front of us. And, of course, our amazing sponsors as we start a new year here in 2023 this week. For Paul Catalina, for Craig Smoak, I'm David Smoak. Thank you very much for being a part of what we do every day. We appreciate you as a family. And this is 365 Sports. Good night.
Ideal MRI is a small family business right here in Central Texas. We're open to support you while lowering